Chapter 867. The night sky was clear and dotted with stars. The bright moonlight shone down on the valley, and everything in the valley seemed to be coated with a layer of silver powder. The temple of the sun on the distant mountain was faintly discernible in the hazy night, exuding a mysterious aura. The night here was beautiful and intoxicating. Charlotte stood in front of the window and looked at the temple of the sun, but he was thinking about a question. Arthur couldn't have lied to me in that situation. Where is the sacred mountain? Could it be that it's just a title within the Knights Hospitaller, and it's another title outside? If he found the sacred mountain, he would have a chance to sneak in and steal the protective suit. But finding the sacred mountain was a prerequisite, and the current situation was that even an archaeologist like Linda, who was familiar with Malta, didn't know about the sacred mountain in Malta. How could he find it? Right, the women from the Grey family and the Russo family must know where the sacred mountain is. I have to find a way to get information about the sacred mountain from their mouth. They will be bullied after returning to the Knights Hospitaller. This is my chance. With this thought in mind, Charlotte left the balcony and returned to his room. He lowered his head to look at the wooden floor under his feet. A second later, he saw Teresa in the room under his feet. Because of the injury on her back, she couldn't lie down and sleep normally, so she could only lie on the bed. Her body was covered with a thin blanket, and her perky buttocks and slender waist formed a wavy shape. It was full of temptation, and people couldn't help but want to lift the blanket off her body. She wasn't asleep. There was a pillow under her head, and there were traces of wetness on the pillow. That was obviously the mark left behind by her tears. Teresa was in the room below, but Charlotte was worried. If I rashly knocked on her door and revealed my identity, she probably wouldn't think of swearing allegiance to me, but snitching to the Knights Hospitaller to atone for her sins, right? If that's the case, I'll be the most foolish person. But just as he was hesitating and unable to come up with a good idea, a woman appeared at Teresa's door. The woman was about 40 years old, tall, and a typical white woman. The woman banged on the door with her fist and said rudely, "Teresa, open the door. Open the door." Inside the house, Teresa scrambled out of bed. She didn't have time to dress. Wrapped in a blanket, she opened the door for the woman. As soon as the door opened, the tall woman waved her hand and slapped Teresa's face without saying a word. Then, she kicked Teresa's stomach. Teresa was kicked to the ground, and the wound on her back hit the floor. She couldn't help but cry out in pain from the burning pain. But even so, she still clutched the blanket on her body tightly, not letting her body be exposed. If that was the case, it would be too ugly. B***tch. Do you think you're still the noble saintess? Your bodies are as dirty as the prostitutes on the streets, and you still have the nerve to cover them up? The tall woman leaned over and grabbed the blanket wrapped around Teresa's body. With a tug, the blanket that Teresa used to hide her ugliness was torn off. The white scenery was exposed. The mountains were high, the water was low, the curves were exquisite, and the wounds that had not healed. Lying on the ground, she could not only stimulate a man's primal desire, but also arouse their pity. But this tall woman obviously did not have the slightest mercy. She suddenly stepped on Teresa's lower abdomen and said fiercely, "You bitch! Who told you to use herbs to treat your wounds? You've committed a crime, and this is the punishment you deserve. You're trying to get away with it." "Commander Tanny, my wounds are inflamed. I'll die if I don't treat them," Teresa begged. "Please let me go, I beg you. We didn't complete the mission, but we didn't betray the night." "Shut up. You disgusting bitch." The woman called Tanny stepped on Teresa's stomach with her foot, her eyes filled with hatred. "You're still lying to us. The news we got was that the four of you knelt down to that Chinese man during the operation in Siberia and swore to be his knight. There were so many witnesses, and now you're telling us that you didn't betray the knights. Your so-called witnesses are thugs who tried to kidnap and kill us." Teresa was also angry. She shouted, Mr. Xia paid $3 million to redeem us. He was just joking at that time. We never did anything for him. If you weren't the knights of that Chinese man, would he pay $3 million to redeem you? Do you think I'm a fool? A woman like you is only worth $500 a night on the street. Would he spend $3 million to do you? $300, he can fill your S*X with diamonds. Tanya spat in Teresa's face. Teresa did not reach out to wipe it away. Tears rolled down the corner of her eyes. Tanny retracted her foot from Teresa's stomach and said fiercely, "Follow me to the confessional." Hearing that, Teresa immediately became nervous. Her face turned pale. "Commander Tanny, I was just whipped yesterday. Why do you want me to go to the confessional again?" "Humph," Tanny sneered. "This time, I'm not the one presiding over you four bitches' confession. William Arthur's father instructed Blake to do it." "William's father? Blake?" Teresa's eyes were filled with fear. Her voice was trembling. "Why?" Tanny said mockingly, "why? So many people went to Siberia to carry out the mission, but only the few of you came back. Arthur's life is still unknown. We can't even find his body. What's wrong with Arthur's father organizing you to repent and atone for your sins? No. It's not fair to us." Teresa lost control of her emotions. She seemed to realize what the outcome of this trip would be. "That's not up to you. Rosa, Giovanna, and Stella have already gone to the confessional. I'll give you 1 minute to put on your clothes. Otherwise, you'll go naked," Tanny said coldly. "You shouldn't do this to us. You shouldn't." Teresa was devastated, but she did not forget what she had to do. She got up from the ground and went to the bed to put on her clothes. 1 minute was not enough, but Tanny was not willing to give her even 1 more second. When the time was up, Tanny grabbed Teresa's hair and violently dragged her out of her room. At this time, Teresa's upper body was still naked. Charlotte looked away. Although he wanted the women of the Grey and Rousseau families to suffer a little more so that he could truly accept them, he was filled with righteous indignation after what had just happened. Such torture did not treat them as one of their own, nor was it some punishment or atonement. They were simply trying to kill them. What had just happened made him understand the reason. If Arthur had not died, they might not have suffered like this. Arthur died, but they came back alive. Would Arthur's father, William Arthur, let them go? That old man is actually a high-ranking member of the hospital knights. I really did not expect that, Charlotte thought. A minute later, he walked out of the door as well. He had an extra scarf on his head. It was the kind of scarf that only Arab women wore on the streets of Valletta. It covered his head from head to neck, not even his eyes were exposed. He was also wearing a long black robe that only Arab women wore. It covered his body completely. This Arab woman's outfit had cost him €50. At that time, Linda had stared at him strangely for a few minutes. Passing through the corridor, Charlotte walked down the stairs. His feet were bare, and there was no sound at all. On the other hand, Tanny and Teresa's footsteps echoed clearly in the stairwell. Arriving at the first floor, Charlotte carefully entered the stairs that extended underground. "Hurry up, you bitch!" Tanny's cursing came from below. Other than her voice and her and Teresa's footsteps, there was no other sound. Even so, Charlotte still awakened the X-ray ability of his left eye and scanned the underground space from the exit of the stairs. He saw an old corridor. The walls on both sides of the corridor were made of thick stone, and there were 2 braziers at intervals to provide light. It was about 50 meters long, and there was a black wooden door at the end. Just as he was about to use his X-ray ability on the wooden door, it suddenly opened. A man walked out from behind the wooden door. This man was actually the teaching assistant who was extremely displeased with him. "Blake, I brought her here. Don't be soft-hearted." Tanny pushed Teresa towards the teaching assistant. Charlotte's lips curled into a cold smile. "So he is Blake. That makes things easier. Don't worry. I will take good care of the 4 of them. This is what Mr. William Arthur wants. I don't dare to not give him a satisfactory result." Blake grabbed Teresa's arm and pushed her into the black wooden door. Behind the black wooden door came the sound of Teresa falling and the voices of the other 3 women calling her name. "Enjoy it then." Tanny smirked at Blake and turned towards the direction of the stairs. Blake stepped through the black wooden door and closed it behind him. Tanny mumbled to herself as she walked, "Those Gray and Rousseau bitches. Do they think they can get away with just a little punishment this time? In their dreams. You killed old man William Arthur's son. Do you think you can live after that? How stupid. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't have come back. Serves you right. You used to call yourselves saintesses, thinking highly of yourselves and looking down on everyone. Now you are worse than bitches." When she reached the corner of the stairwell, a woman's scream came from behind the black wooden door. Tanny looked back and a gloating smile appeared on her face. Then she looked away and stepped over the corner, ready to step onto the stairs and leave. However, at that moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared. Before she could see what it was, a sharp saber stabbed into her heart. It was not until her heart was stabbed that she saw what the black shadow was. It was an Arabian woman. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth to scream, but she no longer had the strength to make a sound. "How dare you bully my people? You're asking for it." Charlotte pulled out the saber and gently pushed Tanny away. Then he walked towards the black door at the end of the hallway. Tanny fell to the ground, her blood staining the floor. Chapter 868. Perhaps it was because the location was too remote, or perhaps it was because of a fondness for ancient things, or perhaps it was because of the deliberate emphasis on medieval chivalry, there were no electric lights or surveillance cameras in this ancient castle. This made it easier for Siale to act, but it also made him waver in his previous judgment. This place was not the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller. It was likely to be an outpost or a sub-base or something. Charlotte quickly passed through the corridor and arrived in front of the black wooden door. "Ah!" A woman's scream pierced through the wooden door. The scream seemed to be soaked in blood and tears. It echoed in the gloomy and quiet corridor, giving people a creepy feeling. Charlotte's gaze pierced through the wooden door and saw the scene of the so-called confessional. The space behind the door was not big, and there was a small wooden hut similar to the ones in churches where believers confessed to the priest. But it was obviously a decoration. Most of the things in the confessional were all kinds of torture tools, whips, hangers, all kinds of knives, stoves, soldering irons, and so on. Blake stood in the middle of the confessional with a whip in hand. The women from the Gray and Rousseau families had their backs to him as they knelt on the ground. Just as Charlotte saw the situation in the confessional, Blake waved the whip and lashed at Giovanna's perky buttocks. With a crisp smack, the greasy whip lashed at her plump buttocks. The cloth was instantly torn apart, and the tender flesh on her buttocks burst open. Blood splattered, wetting the whip, and some of it splashed on the corner of Blake's pants. Giovanna, who was kneeling on the ground, immediately fell to the ground. She looked at Blake in horror, then crawled to the corner of the confessional. He. Blake laughed coldly. "Is there any use? You have sinned, and this is the punishment from the Father. This is your path of atonement, and you should walk it calmly to the end, not run away. Running away will only increase your sins, and you will go to hell." "Enough!" Rosa roared crazily. "We have not sinned at all. We abide by the Knight's Creed. We are loyal and brave, we uphold justice." Before Rosa could finish, Blake swung his hand and whipped Rosa's buttocks. This whip was even more ruthless than the previous one. It instantly tore apart the cloth wrapping Rosa's plump buttocks, and it was a large piece. Without the cover of the cloth, a large area of snow-white skin that was stained with fresh blood was exposed. Even her secret place was almost exposed. Rosa was very stubborn. She covered her butt and stared at Blake stubbornly. Her eyes were filled with anger and hatred, as well as deep regret. "Humph! You still have some backbone. Blake sneered. Tell me, how did you collude with Charlotte to kill Arthur? Tell me, and I'll give you a quick death. What do you want us to say to make you believe us? We didn't kill Arthur. Teresa cried and roared. Yes, we're knights. You can't do this to us. Stella was so angry that she cried. They were crying not only because of the pain they had suffered, but also because of the injustice they had suffered. Knight? Hee, you probably don't know yet, right? Your knighthood has already been taken away. You're now 4 sinners. Death is the only way for you to atone for your sins. I can make it a little faster, but I can also make it very long. After saying that, Blake waved the whip again and fiercely whipped Teresa's back. Teresa screamed and curled up on the ground, her body trembling non-stop. But Blake didn't show any mercy. He swung the whip in a circle in the air and whipped Stella's buttock. Her flesh was lacerated and blood splattered everywhere. Outside the door, Charlotte's eyes widened in anger. He wished he could immediately rush in and kill Blake to save the 4 women who had been bullied. But he suppressed the anger in his heart and the impulse to rush in to save them. He had to ascertain the mental state of these 4 women. Otherwise, if he rashly saved them, they might betray him in the blink of an eye. It wasn't like this hadn't happened before. During the mission in Siberia, he had paid a huge price to save the 4 of them, but in the end, he was still betrayed. He learned from his mistakes, and he wouldn't make the same mistake a second time. Slap, slap, slap. The sound of whips lashing against flesh, the sound of insults and humiliation, the sound of screams, and the sound of weeping mixed together in the confessional. It felt like watching a perverted demon movie. After a few minutes, Blake finally stopped. It wasn't because he was soft-hearted, but because he was tired. The 4 women were curled up on the floor of the confessional. The cold slabs of the floor were splattered with their blood and torn cloth. Their clothes weren't covering their bodies, and their breasts were exposed. They were no longer loyal and brave knights, but just miserable female slaves. Here, they had no status or human rights to speak of. Anyone could bully and humiliate them, no matter how excessive. Their screams and moans, as well as the seductive breasts exposed on their bodies, seemed to have stimulated Blake's desire. He put down the whip in his hand and walked to Giovanna. He reached out and grabbed Giovanna's hair, pulling her up from the floor. What are you doing? Giovanna seemed to have guessed something from Blake's lustful eyes, and her heart was filled with fear and hatred. Blake reached out and pinched Giovanna's chest, a greedy and evil smile appearing on his face. If the 4 of you can make me feel comfortable, I'll give you a quick death. No! Giovanna roared. Kill me! Whore! Blake slapped Giovanna's face and said fiercely, You can serve that disgusting Charlotte, but can't you serve me? You're all dirty whore. After scolding, he unzipped his pants. At this time, Rosa suddenly crawled up from the floor and pounced on Blake's back. Almost at the same time, Stella and Teresa threw themselves at Blake, grabbing both of his feet. The 4 women finally began to resist. However, they were tortured and covered in injuries. They were not Blake's match. Blake grabbed Rosa's hair and pulled her down from his back. Rosa fell heavily on the stone floor and was unable to get up. Blake kicked Teresa out of the way and grabbed Stella by the hair. You bitch! Blow or I'll kill your 3 sisters. After saying that, he pulled out a pistol from his belt and pointed it at Giovanna's head. Kill me, I beg you, kill me! Stella cried. Making her use her mouth to serve a man like Blake was even more painful than killing her. Fuck. You think I won't do it? I'll kill Giovanna right now. Blake released Stella's hair and pulled back the bolt. No. Stella said in despair. I promise you. Ha ha ha. Blake laughed. A whore will always be a whore. Hurry up and let me feel good. Ha ha. Stella's tears flowed out. Boom. The unbolted wooden door was suddenly kicked open. Blake subconsciously turned his head and his arm made a gun-swinging motion. But before he could move the muzzle in the direction of the door, A military knife flew through the air and ruthlessly stabbed into his wrist that was holding the gun. But the pistol fell to the ground. A black shadow leapt in from the doorway, leaping up and kicking out. The heavy legs smashed into Blake's face. Blood and teeth sprayed out from Blake's mouth. His nose was broken by the black figure's kick and blood flowed out from his nose. His body also left the ground and flew a few meters away before falling heavily on the ground. The four women stared at the black figure descending from the sky. An Arab woman? How was that possible? Before the four women could recover, the Arab woman had already picked up the pistol on the ground. Who are you? Blake climbed up from the ground and looked at the Arab woman in front of him in horror. Saladin asked me to bring you a message, the Arab woman said. A new holy war has begun. The Crusaders will pay for the blood debt they owed in the past. You are a man. Who are you? Blake slowly moved toward the door, talking to distract the Arab woman. Do you know what this place is? This is the Knights Hospitallers' place. If you kill me, you won't live either. Put down the gun, and I will let you leave. The Arab woman took off the black hood on her head, revealing a Chinese face. It's you. Blake was stunned. He never dreamed that it was Marley. Charlotte looked back at the four women and said calmly, You idiots, why are you still standing there? Close the door. Giovanna was stunned for a moment and suddenly said, It's you. It's you. Rosa's voice said. When I was helping you with the quilt during the day, I felt that it was strange. Why did I feel that you looked familiar? I didn't expect it to really be you. Stella got up from the ground and closed the wooden door. What are you talking about? Who is he? Blake seemed to have realized something, but he was not sure. Charlotte smiled and rubbed his face a few times. Then, he took off his entire face. Under the exquisite human skin mask was a handsome face. It was Charlotte's face. Blake had never seen Charlotte before, but he had seen many photos of Charlotte. Charlotte revealed his original appearance. He suddenly roared and pounced at Charlotte. In the short moment he pounced at Charlotte, he endured the pain and pulled out the military knife that had pierced through his wrist. Then, he stabbed the knife at Charlotte's chest. Charlotte shook his head and dodged to the side. Then, he grabbed Blake's wrist and twisted it in the opposite direction of the joint. Blake screamed. He felt that his elbow joint was torn. Charlotte chopped at Blake's throat with his palm. Then, he grabbed his collar and threw him to the ground. Bang! Blake's body hit the stone floor with a heavy thud. This fall almost caused him to lose his breath. His screams came to an abrupt stop. All that was left was the sound of him desperately sucking in air. Charlotte had severely injured his throat. Even if he wanted to call for help, he did not have the ability to do so. Charlotte walked in front of Blake. He suddenly raised his foot and ruthlessly stomped on the vital spot between Blake's legs. Ah! Blake screamed, but his voice was hoarse. They are my women, my knights. You actually dare to treat them like this. Damn it, you're courting death. Siale cursed hatefully. These words were actually meant for the four women behind him to hear. Mr. Sia. Giovanna crawled up from the ground. Why are you here? Isn't it because of the four of you? Charlotte glared at her. I received information that the four of you have been stripped of your knight titles and reduced to female slaves. Arthur's father wants to kill you to avenge Arthur. Tell me, can I just watch all of you die before my eyes? As soon as these words came out, even he felt that his image was incomparably glorious. Chapter 869. Seeing hope in a hopeless situation was undoubtedly the feeling of being frozen to death in a world of ice and snow, but someone suddenly brought them a brazier. The person who brought them the brazier was Charlotte, and it was not the first time he had saved them from desperate situations. The four women looked at Charlotte eagerly, and their eyes became fervent. At this time, Charlotte was undoubtedly the closest person to them. Charlotte said, I know you are people of faith, but you don't have to stick to your faith in the Knights Hospitaller, do you? There are so many Catholics in this world, and I believe that most Catholics do not know of the existence of the Knights Hospitaller, right? He pointed to Blake on the ground. You should not be insulted and killed by such scum. What have you gotten for your loyalty? Do you still have to pay your loyalty? Come with me, be my knight, continue your career as a knight in another way, and stick to your faith. We? Giovanna tentatively asked, are we still your knights? Charlotte nodded. Why not? I have never given up on you. Otherwise, why would I take such a big risk to save you? The four women glanced at each other and made eye contact. After that, they walked in front of Charlotte, knelt down on one knee, and lowered their head. Charlotte seemed to have thought of something. He picked up the saber that had fallen on the ground, and then patted the four women on their heads and shoulders one by one. He said, in front of a strong enemy, be fearless, courageous, loyal, and worthy of God. Gung Jing bluntly said that he would rather die than yield. Protect the weak, there is no justice. This is your oath, remember it well. Knighthood. The four women said in unison, I vow to be kind to the weak, I vow to fight bravely against rape, I vow to fight against all wrongs, I vow to fight for the defenseless, I vow to help anyone who asks me for help, I vow not to hurt any woman, I vow to help my brother knights, I vow to treat my friends with sincerity, I vow to love until death. Then, the four women slightly raised their heads to look at Charlotte and said in unison, from now on, I will be your knight. I will protect you, loyal and brave, until death. The Knights Hospitaller had stripped them of their knighthood. Now that Charlotte had made them knights, they swore allegiance to her. This time was different from the time in Siberia, for their hearts were with the Knights Hospitaller. This time, the Knights Hospitaller had completely disappointed them, and Charlotte had brought them light and hope in a desperate situation. He had conferred them the title of knights in such an environment. Their hearts and bodies had already belonged to Charlotte. In fact, Charlotte did not have the right to make anyone a knight, but in the eyes of the women of the Grey and Rousseau families, he was the king and lord in their hearts. He had this right, so they knelt in front of him and let him carry out this ceremony. This ritual could help them regain their faith and dignity, as well as the faith of knights. You don't have the right to be conferred the title of a knight, Blake said in a hoarse voice. No one will recognize you, and you won't be able to leave this place. You will all die here. I don't know if we will die, but I know that you will die very soon. Charlotte walked towards Blake with a saber in hand. Only now did Blake realize that his mouth was really stinky, and this time, his stinky mouth had brought him disaster. Master, leave him to us, said Giovanna. She and the other three women climbed up from the ground. Xia Lei stopped in his tracks and looked at them. Their bodies were full of scars, and their clothes did not cover their bodies. Half of Giovanna's chest was exposed, stained with blood, like a white magnolia that had been ravaged by the wind and rain. More than half of Rose's but was exposed. It was full of scars, but it still maintained its plump and round curves, which had a natural allure. Stella's lower abdomen was not covered by any cloth, and her cute navel gave people a candy-like feeling. These were his knights, and he did not know where to look. Giovanna picked up the whip from the ground, Stella took a deboning knife from the wooden rack, Teresa picked up the red-hot iron from the brazier, and Rosa took an axe from the other rack. Charlotte stepped aside. The four women walked towards Blake, their eyes were terrifyingly cold. You don't want to live anymore? Blake crawled towards the corner of the wall in fear. Giovanna swung her whip at Blake's face, and the skin split open. Rosa's axe chopped at Blake's heel, and blood splattered everywhere. She had actually chopped off one of his feet. Ah! Blake screamed. Just as Blake screamed, Stella stabbed the deboning knife in her hand into Blake's lower abdomen, and Teresa stabbed the red-hot iron in her hand into the area between Blake's legs. Even Charlotte did not dare to watch the scene of the four women taking revenge. He shifted his gaze, but the skin on his back still felt numb. Don't provoke women. Why were there always fools who could not remember this? Blake did not last more than 2 minutes under the hands of the 4 women, and he died. 2 minutes ago, he was still in one piece, but 2 minutes later, his head rolled to the side, and his 2 legs became 4. His body was pierced with 17 to 18 holes, and even his penis was burned into a roasted sausage. Moreover, it was the kind of sausage that was roasted into charcoal. Ah! Chopping someone to this extent was not enough to vent her anger. Rosa, who was holding an axe, spat on Blake's face and then kicked his head into the corner of the wall. In the process of the 4 women killing Blake, Charlotte put on his human skin mask again. He also put on the Arabian woman's headscarf, and then said to the 4 women, "Tell me, where is the sacred mountain?" "You want to go to the sacred mountain?" Giovanna said in surprise. "It's very dangerous there." Charlotte said, "I naturally have my ways. Tell me, where is it?" "Did you see the Sun Temple during the day?" Teresa's voice was heard. Charlotte's heart stirred. "I saw it. Could it be—" "Yes, that mountain is the sacred mountain," Teresa said. Teresa said, "This castle is just an outpost of the Knights Hospitaller. Their current headquarters is in that mountain. The sacred palace is also in the sacred mountain, but it's almost impossible to invade." Rosa's expression was grave. "Don't go. The guards there are beyond your imagination. You'll die." Stella also said nervously, "Master, can you tell us why you want to go to the sacred mountain?" Charlotte patted Stella's shoulder. "Don't call me master, just call me by my name." Giovanna frowned. "All right, Sia, don't change the subject." Charlotte was speechless. "You can choose not to tell us your goal. We can understand," Giovanna said. "However, we want to go with you." "Yes," the other 3 women said. "We are your knights." Charlotte said, "Can the 4 of you fight in your current state?" The 4 women looked at each other, but their eyes were very determined. "We can shoot," Giovanna said. "We are familiar with the environment there," Rosa said. "We want to protect you," Stella said. "We won't let you go to the sacred mountain alone," Teresa said. They changed sides and became his knights. The loyalty and bravery of knights were also reflected in them. This made Charlotte happy, but it also gave him a headache. They insisted on going with him, but in their current state, they wouldn't be able to help him. Instead, they would become his burden. Charlotte thought for a moment and had an idea. "All right, I won't go to the sacred mountain for now. I'll take you away from here first. When you've recovered, we'll make a decision." Giovanna smiled bitterly. "This island is the territory of the Knights Hospitaller. The Knights Hospitaller are almost an invisible kingdom on this island. Where can we hide?" "Yes, unless we leave the island of Malta, we won't be able to escape the pursuit of the Knights Hospitaller," Teresa said. Charlotte smiled. "Although this island is the territory of the Knights Hospitaller, I want to protect you. Even the Knights Hospitaller can't touch you. There's one place you definitely haven't thought of, and that's the Embassy of China. If you go there to recuperate, even if the Knights Hospitaller find out that you're there, they can't do anything to you." The embassy was equivalent to the territory of a country, and Malta was also a sovereign country. Although the Knights Hospitaller had an invisible and powerful force on the island of Malta, it was still impossible for them to compete with the army of a country. Therefore, the embassy was the most ideal place to take refuge. "We're going to the embassy. What about you?" Giovanna asked. Charlotte said, "I'm going to stay here. Don't worry, I'll be fine, and I won't act rashly." Giovanna said, "All right, be careful." The other 3 women no longer insisted on staying by Charlotte's side. Charlotte left the confessional with the 4 women and walked through the corridor to the staircase. The 4 women saw Tanny's corpse on the ground. Rosa, who had the most unyielding temper, even kicked Tanny's head. When they reached the ground, Charlotte was about to walk into the hall, but the 4 women dragged him into a room and overturned into the backyard. There was a stable in the backyard, and there were horses inside. Seeing the horses, Charlotte understood their plan. Just as the four women went to get the horses, Charlotte opened the back door for them in advance. The four women walked out of the back door of the castle with the horses. Giovanna said, "Xia, how can we get into the embassy of China?" "That's right, if you don't go, we won't be able to get in at all," Teresa said. Charlotte walked to Giovanna's side and suddenly reached out to grab a tear in her maid dress. He pulled hard and tore off a piece of cloth. "You!" Giovanna looked at Charlotte in surprise, not knowing what he was going to do. However, something even more embarrassing happened. Charlotte reached out and touched her bare buttocks. After dipping her buttocks in blood, he wrote a string of numbers on the rag. "Call this number when you arrive in Valletta. Just say that you are my people. She will arrange everything for you." Charlotte stuffed the rag into Giovanna's hands. The number he wrote on the rag was Fanfan's number. "Go, go. Be careful on the road," Charlotte urged. "You be careful too." Giovanna mounted the horse and spurred it away. The other three women also mounted their horses and quickly left under the cover of the night. Charlotte was not worried at all that they would be attacked by the Knights Hospitaller on the road, because this place had always been under the control of the Zodiac Squad. Chapter 870. The Zodiac Squad had lost 4 members, and Giovanna, Stella, Rosa, and Teresa could fill the gap. This seemed to be one of the reasons why Charlotte accepted them. But now was not the time for the 4 female knights to meet the members of the Zodiac Squad. After all, in the hearts of the 4 female knights, the members of the Zodiac Squad were dead. It was not a good thing for them to accept so much in a short time. They also needed some time to adapt and accept their new life. Back in his room, Charlotte washed the blood off his hands from Giovanna's butt. He also destroyed the Arabian woman's robe. After taking care of everything, he went back to bed, but he could only lie down. He could not fall asleep. His mind was filled with images of Giovanna and the others being abused, and a thought about how to enter the Holy Palace. Holy Mountain was below the Sun God Temple. The headquarters of the Holy Palace and the Knights Hospitaller were in that mountain. It was heavily guarded. How could he get in? "I've copied Arthur's pass, so I can enter the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller, but I can't do it with my current appearance. I have to change my appearance again. Whose appearance should I use to enter the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller?" He thought of Blake, and then of William Arthur and Professor von Kalen. Blake's identity was obviously not enough, but it was very difficult to disguise as William Arthur and von Karen. Their ages were a problem, but the bigger problem was that both of them were still alive and could appear at the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller at any time. When that time came, he would immediately reveal his true form. How could he solve this problem? Charlotte fell into deep thought. An hour later, there were noises coming from the corridor outside the back door. Some people were running, some were shouting, and some were knocking on the door. Soon, the bell in the bell tower rang. Charlotte suddenly jumped out of bed and went to the balcony to look in the direction of the Holy Mountain. This bell was obviously sending some kind of signal to the Holy Mountain. Would the headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller send someone over? Unfortunately, it was too far away. Even with his left eye, he could not see the situation on the Holy Mountain clearly. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking came, and an unfamiliar man's voice came. "Come out. Come out." Charlotte shifted his gaze to the door. Outside the door was a bald, middle-aged white man. He had a burly figure and a fierce look in his eyes. "Open the door." The bald man slammed the door. Charlotte walked over, opened the door, and politely said, "Sir, what can I do for you?" "Don't ask. Go to the hall downstairs and wait," the bald man said in an unfriendly tone. "I'm sleeping," Charlotte said reluctantly. The bald man pulled Charlotte out of the door and then pushed Charlotte. "I told you to go, so go. Don't talk nonsense." Charlotte shrugged. He was a little dissatisfied, but he didn't dare to resist. At this time, Linda also walked out of her room. She asked in surprise, What happened? Charlotte shook his head. I don't know. He asked me to wait in the hall downstairs. The bald man said, You also go to the hall downstairs and wait. All right. Linda walked towards Charlotte. Can you tell me what happened? Don't ask so many questions. The bald man was obviously much more polite to Linda than to Charlotte. Charlotte and Linda went to the hall downstairs. There was a plastic sheet on the floor, and on it were two corpses. One was Tanny's corpse, which didn't look like much. The other was Blake's corpse, but it was a horrible sight. His head and feet had been chopped off, and there were 17 or 18 holes on his body. His lower body had also been burned into charcoal. Ugh! Linda couldn't help but feel nauseous. She covered her mouth to prevent herself from vomiting. Xiaolei also made a retching sound and almost vomited. Von Karen and William Arthur were also in the hall. They looked at Linda and Charlotte with a gloomy expression. Beside the two of them were two bald men, both of whom were Caucasian. Charlotte, who was pretending to vomit, thought to himself, Why are there so many bald men? Could it be that the black-robed gunman who came to kill Linda that night was actually from the Knights Hospitaller? If that's the case, that would be walking right into a trap. The sense of danger suddenly rose, but a new opportunity also appeared in front of Charlotte. If the gunman who killed Professor Armin and the gunman who went after Linda were from the Knights Hospitaller, then the Book of Iron was also in the hands of the Knights Hospitaller. A new conjecture about the Knights Hospitaller quietly appeared in his mind. The Knights Hospitaller actually knew something, such as the ancient alloy and the secret of AE. For hundreds of years, they had always been on their own. The murder of an Italian professor had led to these conjectures. Although it couldn't be confirmed, he was sure that the possibility was more than 80%. Just as Charlotte's mind was racing, Von Karen said, Mr. Marley, where were you before? Charlotte collected his thoughts and said in surprise, I've been sleeping in my room all this time. Why are you asking me this? I don't mean anything else. You saw it for yourself. There was a murder here, and the murderer was extremely cruel. I just want to understand the situation, Von Karen said. I really have been sleeping in my room all this time. Charlotte looked wronged and innocent. What about you? Von Karen looked at Linda. I was sleeping in my room too, Linda said. I only woke up when I heard a lot of noise outside. Can I leave here? I really can't stand the smell here. Von Karen said coldly, No one can leave before I finish the investigation. William Arthur walked over to Charlotte. He stopped in front of Charlotte and suddenly sniffed the smell on Charlotte's body. Charlotte pretended to be confused. What are you doing? William Arthur suddenly reached out and grabbed Charlotte's arm. Why is there such a strong smell of blood on you? Charlotte's heart tightened. Here, there's a smell of blood everywhere. Don't talk nonsense. I didn't do anything. William Arthur's hand exerted force. Ouch! Charlotte cried out in pain. What are you doing? Let me go. William Arthur suddenly pushed forward, and Charlotte stumbled and fell to the ground. What are you doing? Linda hurriedly helped Charlotte up and said angrily, If you suspect us of murder, then please show us the evidence. If you have the evidence, then hand us over to the Maltese police. What are you doing? Von Karen laughed coldly. Miss Linda, you and Mr. Marley came here illegally, right? Linda was stunned for a moment. What are you trying to say? Von Karen said, Miss Linda, no one knows you're in Malta, right? What do you mean? Linda suddenly became nervous. Isn't what I mean very obvious? Von Karen revealed a ferocious expression. No one knows you're in Malta, so naturally no one knows you're dead. Linda suddenly understood something. She said agitatedly, It's you killed Professor Armin. Professor Armin was my good friend. I didn't want to do that, but he had to die. Von Karen said, I didn't go to get any information at all. I only went to the customs to check the immigration record. If you came through the customs, and the Vatican knew you were looking for me, I really couldn't do anything to you. But I didn't expect you to come here illegally. Hee, that makes things much easier. You want to kill us? Linda was shocked and angry. She said angrily, "Why?" "Because you know too much." Von Karen gave a look to the bald man beside him. The bald man then walked over and grabbed Linda's arm. William Arthur also pulled Charlotte up from the ground and handed Charlotte to the other two bald men. "You can't do this," Linda cried. "We're innocent." Von Karen was indifferent. Although he said that Linda knew too much, even he knew that Linda knew pitifully little. Even so, he wouldn't leave anyone alive. He wouldn't give Linda the chance to continue looking for the Book of Iron. After Charlotte and Linda were taken away, William Arthur said, "That bitch killed Tanny and Blake. I'm going to catch them, chop them up and feed them to the dogs." "We've already sounded the alarm. The headquarters will send people over soon. You'll be leading them to chase those 4 women. This is our territory. They can't escape." Von Karen's voice was cold. "What about that thing?" William Arthur looked at Von Karen, his eyes filled with caution and suspicion. Von Karen shrugged. "We've been friends for decades. Don't you trust me? We got that thing together. Of course, I'll wait for you to come back and hand it over to the commander. I won't take all the credit and glory for myself. Really, please trust me." "Of course I trust you. We'll do as you say. I'll bring people to catch those 4 bitches. You take care of the archaeologist and the Chinese. Tomorrow, we'll go to the headquarters together and hand the Book of Iron to the commander," William Arthur said. I can't wait for the miracle to happen. How many people have sacrificed their blood and lives for this day? We are the luckiest people. Only we can witness the miracle with our own eyes." A smile appeared on Von Karen's face. His brain seemed to be picturing the so-called miracle. He couldn't help but feel excited. William Arthur also smiled. He opened his arms and hugged Von Karen. It was just a hug, but the smile on Von Karen's face froze. He pushed William away from Arthur and glanced down at his chest. He saw a sharp knife stuck in his chest. Blood gushed out and dyed half of his body red. He pointed at William Arthur, his eyes filled with anger and indignation. "You why?" William Arthur laughed coldly. "You, Blake, and Tanny were all killed by those 4 bitches. They killed you and then escaped. I'll hunt them down. I'll avenge you. You." Before he could finish, Von Karen fell to the ground. His eyes were wide open in anger. He died with a grievance. "Rest in peace, my friend," William Arthur said calmly. "You've been friends with Professor Armin for decades. You can do it. I've been friends with you for decades. I can do it too. But it's not that I want to take all the credit and glory for myself. The Vatican will see you as a clue to finding the Book of Iron. You must die." Unfortunately, Von Karen could no longer hear these words. Chapter 871. "Let me go. Let me go." Linda cried and struggled. The bald man who was holding her captive was as strong as a bear. Her strength was negligible in front of that guy. "You better behave yourself." The bald man slapped the back of Linda's head and said fiercely, "If you don't behave yourself, I'll kill you right now. I can let you go, but please let my friend go. He's innocent. He's just a tourist in Malta." Linda was not the kind of woman who would listen to orders. Charlotte was touched. Even at this time, she was not thinking about herself, but the friend she had just met. It was not hard to see that she was a good person. "Damn you, bitch." The bald man grabbed Linda and put her on his shoulder. Then he strode to the door of the backyard. Compared to Linda's struggle and clamor, Xia Lei's captive was much more obedient and quiet. He was also very cooperative. Under the escort of the 2 bald men, he neither struggled nor begged for mercy. Even his words were very polite. "2 big brothers, where are you taking us?" Charlotte asked carefully. One of the bald men sneered. "We're going to send you to the gate of hell, understand?" Charlotte shook his head. I'm a good person, so even if I die, I will only go to heaven, not hell. The other bald man slapped the back of Charlotte's head. Shut your mouth. Save your strength so you can dig a hole later. Dig a hole? Why would we dig a hole? Charlotte looked confused. Is this China guy a pig? One of the bald men could not help but laugh. He must be a pig, stupid China guy. The other bald man also laughed. Out of the back door, the three bald men escorted Charlotte and Linda into a dense forest. There was an open space in the forest. In the open space there was a wooden cross, but there was not even a name on it. This place was clearly used to dispose of the dead. It was a cemetery. The bald man who carried Linda threw her on the ground. Linda fainted under the impact and fear. Bastard! Baldy cursed. Then, he looked at Charlotte. Your friend has already fainted. Looks like you'll have to dig 2 holes. The 2 bald men who were holding Charlotte released their hands, and one of them went to get a shovel for Charlotte. There's someone there. Charlotte suddenly pointed in a direction. The 3 bald heads looked in the direction of Charlotte's finger at almost the same time. There was nothing there. At this moment, Charlotte suddenly struck the throat of the bald man beside him with his palm. The bone of his palm struck the brittle bones of the throat, and a crisp sound was immediately heard. The bald man, who had suddenly suffered a heavy blow, immediately covered his neck and gasped for breath. Charlotte suddenly turned around, and at the same time, swept a whip kick at the bald man's neck. Guan, who had suffered 2 heavy blows in an instant, softly fell to the ground. Until he fainted, he still couldn't believe that things would turn out this way. How did a pig-like Chinaman turn into a tiger in the blink of an eye? The remaining 2 bald men suddenly woke up and pounced at Charlotte at the same time. However, before they could reach Charlotte, 2 shurikens flew out from the forest behind them and viciously stabbed into the back of their heads. The 2 bald men fell to the ground at the same time. Blood flowed from the back of their heads, dyeing their bald heads red. "Come out," Charlotte said. A petite figure walked out from the darkness. She was the female ninja of the Chinese Zodiac battle team, Akiko Tsukino. Among all the members of the Chinese Zodiac battle team, only she had the ability to hide beside this ancient castle without worrying about being discovered by the night hospitaller. Akiko Tsukino said calmly, "Half an hour ago, I saw those 4 women come out. I was going to kill them, but I saw you touch one of their buttocks, so I changed my mind." Charlotte was speechless. "But what should we do with this?" Akiko Tsukino pointed at the unconscious Linda. Charlotte smiled bitterly. "You're not thinking of killing her, are you? Killing her is in our best interest." "She's a problem," Akiko Tsukino said. "No, I still need her to bring me to the Temple of the Sun." Charlotte pointed in the direction of the Holy Mountain. "That mountain is the Holy Mountain. The headquarters of the Night Hospitaller and the Holy Palace are in that mountain. The situation there is very complicated. I need to borrow her identity to go to the Temple of the Sun." "Yes, an official identity." "Alright, I was just kidding." Akiko Tsukino had no intention of killing Linda. When Linda was facing the threat of death, she fought for Charlotte's survival. Based on this, she wouldn't kill her. "Then I'll leave this to you. Help me take care of her. I'll be back soon." Charlotte went back the way he came. Akiko Tsukino went to the person who was knocked out by Charlotte. She stepped on his hand and spun him around. The bald man was awakened by the pain. Akiko Tsukino said in English, "Get up. It's time to dig a hole." The bald man was stunned for a moment. When he realized that there was only a petite woman, he suddenly swept his leg towards Akiko Tsukino's lower body. A ray of cold light suddenly flashed, and when it stopped again, it happened to pierce the baldy's attacking right foot. It was a short sword. It pierced through the back of his foot and came out from the bottom of his foot. It was so sharp that it was like cutting tofu. The bald man opened his mouth to scream, but Akiko Tsukino waved her hand and pulled out the sword. In an instant, the sword cut through the bald man's open mouth. A stream of blood spurted out from the bald man's mouth, along with half of his tongue. Akiko Tsukino said, "Get up. It's time to dig a hole. Otherwise, I'll cut you up piece by piece." Cold sweat started to form on the bald man's forehead. The castle didn't change at all. Although so many people had died that night, it didn't change at all. It still looked so peaceful, ancient, and mysterious under the night sky. For hundreds of years, countless people had died in this castle, but it didn't feel anything. Charlotte didn't go through the front door. Instead, he entered the castle through the window that Giovanna and the others led him through. After entering the castle, he immediately activated the X-ray ability of his left eye. He quickly scanned the situation on the first floor. 2 people were dealing with a corpse in the front hall. Realizing that it was Ferkel's corpse, Xiaolei was stunned. He thought to himself, only William Arthur would be able to kill Ferkel here. I can't believe he's willing to kill his own people. It seems that he wants to monopolize the metal book. This thought made him excited. If the metal book had been sent to the headquarters of the Night Hospitaller, it wouldn't be good news for him. If William Arthur killed Ferkel at this time, what else could it be other than the metal book? This was actually very easy to guess. Charlotte followed him to the second floor. He scanned the surroundings with his X-ray ability. When he didn't find William Arthur, he raised his head and used his X-ray ability on the 3rd floor of the castle. With his X-ray vision, he saw William Arthur in Ferkel's study. Charlotte followed him to the 3rd floor. In the study, William Arthur pulled out a book from one of the bookshelves. Click, click, click. A series of soft sounds were heard. The bookshelf slowly moved away, revealing the stone wall of the castle. William Arthur touched the stone wall with his hand, then pressed his hands against a piece of stone and pushed it out of the wall. The stone bit by bit entered the wall. When it was about a foot deep, a few bricks suddenly opened outwards, revealing a storage space hidden in the wall. It looked like the inside of a cabinet. It was covered with a red cloth, and on the cloth lay a bronze book. Ha ha! William Arthur couldn't help but laugh. Ferkel, you spent 2 years to convince the Pope to take out the metal book for research. But in the end, it's mine. The metal book, the armor of God. If the legends are true, I'll obtain powerful abilities and even immortality. Do you think I'll give it to the great leader? No, I won't. I believe you won't either. You're also looking for a chance to make a move on me, right? Ha ha. William Arthur reached out and picked up the metal book amidst his laughter. Just as he stood up straight, his body suddenly froze. Then he slowly turned around. He saw a military knife on his back and a man standing at the door. The man was supposed to be buried in the forest behind, but he appeared here and ambushed him. The man was Charlotte. Charlotte walked over to William Arthur with a smile. Thank you. If it weren't for you leading the way, I wouldn't have found the metal book. Not only did you help me find the metal book, you even helped me kill Ferkel. How can I repay you for being so considerate? Hearing these words and seeing the military knife on his back, William Arthur was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of blood seemed to take away all the strength in his body. His body swayed and fell to the ground. Charlotte bent down and snatched the metal book from William Arthur's hand. Then he squatted beside William Arthur and whispered, Tell me, is it troublesome to enter the sacred palace? You will go to hell. William Arthur gasped. Charlotte said, Let's talk about something more useful. Tell me what I want to know, and I'll tell you where Arthur is. William Arthur trembled, and his expression was strange. All right, I'll tell you the truth. I am Charlotte, Charlotte said. William Arthur reached out to Charlotte, as if he wanted to strangle Charlotte before he died. Charlotte pulled William Arthur's hand away. You don't have much time. Knowing your son's life and death before you die is much more realistic than the power and immortality you were hoping for. Deal? Where is he? How do I enter the sacred palace? The gold card, the pass written by the leader himself. You can't enter at all unless what? You killed all the paladins. Xiaolei frowned. That doesn't seem possible. Arthur, where is Arthur? In the soil of Siberia. I killed him, Charlotte said. Ah. Perhaps the bad news had stimulated his potential. William Arthur didn't know where he got the strength from, but he suddenly reached out and grabbed Charlotte's neck. He pulled his upper body up and opened his mouth to bite Charlotte's carotid artery. His blood-stained teeth looked very sharp and ferocious. But in the end, he didn't bite Charlotte's neck, but the iron book. Charlotte stuffed the iron book into William Arthur's mouth and said calmly, "Are you a dog?" After that, he pressed his hand against William Arthur's forehead and slammed William Arthur's head onto the floor. William Arthur's mouth was wide open. He could only breathe out, but not in. Charlotte pulled out the military knife from William Arthur's back and stabbed William Arthur's heart. 3 minutes later, he left the castle and disappeared into the night. In the direction of the sacred mountain, there was a rumbling sound of hooves and torches. A long line of torches slithered like snakes along the mountain path. The people from the Night Hospitaller headquarters had arrived, but they were only left with corpses and puzzles. Chapter 872. The sky was still dark. Dawn was finally back, but it still needed some time. Charlotte came out of the ambassador's office, carrying a medical kit as he walked towards a room. The ambassador's surname was Zhang, and he was a very friendly person. Charlotte chatted with him for a while, thanking him for his help. Of course, he was only able to help because of Fanfan's invitation. In the ambassador's eyes, he was just a special agent carrying out a mission, and the conversation would only last a few minutes. But if he revealed his true identity, the situation would be different. But he would not do that, and there was no need at all. Charlotte knocked on the door. "Who is it?" A voice in broken Chinese came from the other side of the door. It was Giovanna's voice, and she seemed to be a bit nervous. Charlotte said, "It's me." The door opened, and the one who opened it for Charlotte was Rosa. Her body was tightly wrapped in a white bath towel, and the deep V-shaped cleavage on her chest was especially eye-catching. The other 3 women were in a similar situation. They used torn clothes to cover their bodies, and all of them looked dirty. They were in a sorry state, but they were also attractive. Charlotte walked in. Rosa closed the door, and the 4 women bowed their heads to Charlotte. If it was in the past, and Charlotte barged into their room at this time, they would definitely scold him as a pervert or something, but not now. They only had respect and submission for him. Charlotte smiled. "You're welcome. It's not like we've known each other for the first time. Don't you know me well enough?" The 4 women looked at each other, and each of them revealed a smile. "Of course you're a pervert," Giovanna said. "An amazing pervert," Stella said. "You're a lecherous hero," Teresa said. "That's why you came to our room at this time," Rosa said. Charlotte was speechless. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became relaxed. "Xia, thank you," Giovanna said. Charlotte shrugged. "For what?" Giovanna said, "You have shown us the true colors of the Knights Hospitaller, and you have saved us more than once. We are able to continue our career as knights and our faith. This is also a gift from you. Please forgive us for our rudeness and—" She did not continue. Charlotte said with a smile, "And what? In Siberia we actually knew it was a trap, but we still persuaded you to go to Siberia. We also participated in Arthur's plan to capture you, Giovanna lowered her head. "You can punish us." "Hit you?" Charlotte smiled and said, "Look, you guys are already like this. Do you think I can bear to hit you? You are my knights. Let's not talk about the past. I actually have something I'm hiding from you." The gazes of the 4 women shifted to Charlotte at the same time. Charlotte said, "My men didn't die in the operation in Siberia. I hid them." The 4 women could not help but look at each other. After hesitating for a moment, Giovanna said tentatively, "Xia, can I ask you a question?" "There's no need to ask. I can tell you directly, Charlotte said. I killed Arthur. Instead of letting them guess in that direction, it was better to tell them frankly. The four women were stunned on the spot. Charlotte continued, You know, I paid the Knights Hospitaller $50 million and promised to give them a holy relic, but what they did disappointed me. Arthur wanted my life. If I didn't kill him, how could I live? I knew his plan, so I made preparations in advance. I was forced to do it. But, Teresa wanted to say something but stopped. Charlotte smiled. But what? Say what you want to say. All right, Teresa said. You must also know that we participated in Arthur's operation. You could have killed us, so why did you save us? Charlotte smiled. Didn't you always say that I'm lecherous? It's not my style to let such sexy and beautiful women die. Of course, this was not the real reason, but his words made the women from the Grey and Rousseau families blush. Do you blame me for lying to you? Charlotte said. No, you just did what you were supposed to do, but we framed you with Arthur. We. Giovanna looked ashamed. The other three women also looked a little ashamed. Indeed, they had framed Charlotte with Arthur, and Charlotte was only passively fighting back. His concealment was not a lie at all. Seeing their reactions, Xia Lei's heart was finally at ease. He smiled and said, Forget it, let's not talk about the past. You've made a clean break with the past. Prepare to welcome a new life that belongs to you. I promise you, follow me. I won't let you regret it. The four women clearly had different understandings, and their faces inexplicably blushed. Let me treat you. I know a bit of medicine. Charlotte changed the topic. How can we do that? Giovanna's face became even redder. Stella's voice was very small. Give us the medical kit. We can do it ourselves. We can do it ourselves. Teresa said, her voice also very small. Rose's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. Her eyes were 5% expectant, but there was also 90% shy and 5% awkward. The women's attitude was very clear, but Charlotte still shook his head. He said seriously, It's not that I want to take advantage of you. Really, please believe me. You've not only suffered superficial wounds, but also internal injuries. I have to examine you and prescribe you medicine. Otherwise, if the treatment is delayed, your condition will worsen. There's no doctor here, and you can't go to the hospital. I'm the only one here. The four women looked at each other in dismay. They were probably extremely embarrassed. Charlotte said, Who wants to go first? The four women were stunned, and no one went up to receive treatment. Charlotte frowned. Giovanna, you go first. Go lie on the bed. Giovanna hesitated and stammered. Charlotte said, Be obedient and lie on the bed. Treat me as a doctor, and treat yourself as a patient going to the hospital. You'll feel better. All right, I'll go first. Giovanna climbed onto the bed, but her hands were tightly holding onto the ragged clothes covering her body, not letting them fall. Charlotte walked over and tore off the ragged clothes on her body. You! Giovanna's face turned completely red. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Charlotte's actions also put the other three women in an awkward and shy situation, because the treatment that Giovanna was undergoing would soon be their turn. Under the nervous gazes of the four women, Charlotte began his treatment. He grabbed one of Giovanna's soft hands and checked her pulse. However, he was just pretending to check her pulse. His left eye quietly entered the X-ray mode, and he scanned Giovanna's body in all directions, carefully checking the internal condition of her body. Stomach bleeding, intestines red and inflamed, rib dislocation. One diagnosis came out from Charlotte's mouth, and his tone was like that of a miracle doctor. The four women looked at him dumbfounded. They couldn't believe that he could give so many diagnoses just by touching her wrist, and he looked so professional. After giving the diagnosis, Charlotte's right hand reached out to Giovanna's towering body. Giovanna suddenly became nervous. A pair of blue eyes stared straight at Charlotte, wondering if he would take advantage of her body examination to take advantage of her. Just as she was about to die from nervousness, Xia Lei's hand avoided that soft spot and placed it on one of her ribs. Charlotte gently pressed. "Does it hurt?" "It hurts." Giovanna gritted her teeth and frowned slightly, looking very painful. But just when she thought that Charlotte would take his hand away, Charlotte suddenly used his thumb and index finger to clamp her injured rib and pulled it up. "Ah!" Giovanna suddenly screamed. Charlotte let go. "Your rib dislocation must be reset. It's okay now, I'll bandage it for you. Don't move around for the next few days." Giovanna looked at Charlotte in a daze. The suspicion and shyness in her eyes disappeared at this moment, and there was only gratitude and admiration. But this good feeling only lasted for 2 minutes, and it ended when Charlotte used a cotton ball dipped in alcohol to clean her wound. Charlotte's movements were very gentle and very slow. Giovanna watched the cotton ball slide around her body, the highest place, the flat place, and even the place where it shouldn't be. The alcohol brought a burning sensation, but it also brought a trace of a strange feeling, which made her inexplicably nervous and slightly excited. She didn't dare to look at Charlotte's eyes, but her gaze was fixed on the hand that was cleaning her wound. Charlotte bandaged Giovanna's chest, and then helped Giovanna off the bed. "Next. I'll do it." Stella didn't wait for anyone to speak, and she had already climbed onto the bed impatiently. She didn't wait for Charlotte to reach out and take away her tattered clothes, and she lifted them herself. She was plump and tight, with alluring curve. Her fair and delicate skin was almost full of scars, but those scars did not affect her beauty. Instead, they added a little excitement to it. "What injuries do I have?" Stella was inexplicably excited, and she looked very expectant. Rosa and Teresa also looked at Charlotte expectantly, waiting for his diagnosis. They were all very curious about how Charlotte did it. Charlotte grabbed Stella's wrist, and after 2 minutes, he said, "There are signs of inflammation around your anus, and the heat is strong. You'll be fine after taking some anti-inflammatory medicine." Stella, Rosa, Teresa, Giovanna, haha, the diagnosis ended very quickly, but the cleaning of the wound was very slow. Throughout the entire process, Charlotte's expression was solemn, just like a proper doctor. But only he knew that he felt very uncomfortable. If he had not deliberately controlled his own body and desires, the true portrayal of his heart would not have been able to hide. After treating Stella, Charlotte treated Teresa and Rosa. When he was done, it was already dawn. "You guys stay here and recover for now. Don't think about anything else," Charlotte said before he left. The 4 women nodded and watched him leave. As soon as he was gone, they began to chatter. "He's actually a doctor, I really didn't expect it. Yeah, unbelievable. Just now, when he was treating me, I was wondering if he was an almighty god or an angel. I had the same thought too. Oh my god, I was so excited. Are you horny?" "You're horny. Hee, I thought he wanted to do that with us. Do you dare to not admit that you didn't have such thoughts? Can he do it if we're like this? What if we're done? He's so lecherous, he definitely won't let us go. If he wants to do that with us, what should we do?" Outside the door, Charlotte shook his head with a bitter smile, and his footsteps became heavy. Chapter 873. The Knights Hospitaller launched a search in Valletta, looking for the 4 female knights who had defected. Hospitals, hotels, and streets were full of the Knights Hospitaller, but they could not enter the China embassy in Malta to search. That place was equivalent to China's territory, a forbidden zone. Therefore, even if the Knights Hospitaller searched the entire island of Malta, they would not be able to find Giovanna, Stella, Rosa, and Teresa. As for Charlotte, there was no need to even think about it. The next afternoon, a large group of people climbed up the hillside. Their destination was the Sun Temple at the top of the mountain. Among the group were Maltese government officials, Maltese archaeologists, and Maltese police officers in charge of security. Charlotte and Linda were also among them. Charlotte donated a sum of money in Linda's name to protect the Sun Temple. The Maltese Cultural Relics Protection Bureau was happy to see such a thing. When Linda proposed to visit the Sun Temple, they simply sent officials, police, and Maltese archaeologists to accompany them, giving them enough face. This was the effect Charlotte wanted. He spent money to let the Maltese officials intervene. No matter how tyrannical the Knights Hospitaller were, they did not dare to act rashly. After all, the pirates were a sovereign country with their own army and legal status, and the Knights Hospitaller were just a past tense, existing only in history. If they challenged the authority of the current government, then they would probably lose even their foothold. When they arrived at the Sun Temple, Charlotte discovered that it was actually a stone temple. There was no majestic hall like he had imagined, nor was there a solemn and sacred statue. There were just huge stones one after another. They stood under the sky, facing the magnificent Mediterranean Sea, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. Linda and a few archaeologists from Malta discussed the history and unsolved mysteries of the Sun Temple. She was very involved and excited. However, Charlotte intentionally or unintentionally left the crowd and came to the edge of the Sun Temple, leaning over to look at the cliff below him. Under his feet was a vertical cliff with a drop of almost 500 meters. This was the height of more than 100 stories. A timid person would probably not even dare to look at it. He activated the telescopic ability of his left eye and carefully observed the situation below. However, he did not see any caves or secret passages, which made him quite disappointed. When he arrived, he had also observed carefully, but he did not find any traces of the Knights of the Hospital at all. He even awakened his left eye's X-ray ability to see through the ground beneath his feet, but there was no result. All the signs indicated that this was just an ordinary mountain. There was no headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller or the Holy Palace. The information I received can't be false. The headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller is here, but how do I find it? Charlotte fell into deep thought. The sea breeze from the Mediterranean stirred his hair and his clothes. He subconsciously took a step back, but at that moment, he noticed a black spot on the beach below. His left eye then fixed on that black dot. It was a man in a black robe. He was looking at the top of the cliff, but not with his eyes, but with a telescope. He then retracted his upper body, but his left eye's line of sight brushed past the edge of the rock and continued to lock on to the black-robed man. The black-robed man was bald, and the black robe he wore was the same as the one that chased after Linda that night. It looked like the black robe of a wizard. Black robes. Could it be that those black-robed men are the so-called holy knights? He thought to himself. The black-robed man only stayed for 2 minutes, then walked towards the bottom of a huge rock. Charlotte quickly lost sight of him, and could no longer see him. So that's what happened. Charlotte's heart was filled with excitement. The bottom of this cliff is surrounded by cliffs on 3 sides, and it's almost impossible to climb. However, one side is facing the sea, and one can freely enter and exit by boat. If I'm not wrong, there must be a cave and a waterway below. The appearance of the black-robed man gave him a hint, and also made things easier. If the black-robed man did not come out to spy on the situation above, he was afraid that he would have spent a lot of time on the mountain before turning his attention to the bottom of the cliff. "Mr. Marley, what are you doing? Come back." It was Linda's voice, and she seemed very nervous. Only then did Charlotte leave the edge of the cliff. "It's nothing, I'm just curious to see what's down there." "You're like a child." Linda curled her lips and said, "Have you ever thought about what would happen if you fell down?" Charlotte thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "Probably become Italian pizza?" Linda could not help but laugh out loud. "Did you find anything or gain anything?" Charlotte changed the topic. Linda said, "I've been to this temple long ago. If there were any discoveries or gains, it was in the past. This time, I'm here to accompany you, but you're doing boring and dangerous things here. Oh, sorry, can you accompany me for a walk? I want to take a look at this temple seriously. Charlotte said. Sure, no problem. Linda held onto Charlotte's arm. You can ask me anything you want to know. I'll satisfy all your requests. Was there another meaning in this sentence? Charlotte did not think too deeply about it. He continued to act gay. Accompanied by Linda, Charlotte walked around the sun god temple. This temple had a history of more than 10,000 years. At that time, humans were still in the Stone Age, and the most advanced technology was fire and stone tools. It was impossible to build such a stone temple, not to mention that it could calculate the accurate time based on sunlight. It's really hard to imagine. How could humans build such a majestic sun god temple more than 10,000 years ago? This mystery has troubled the archaeological world for many years, and I still can't understand it. Linda looked at Charlotte. Mr. Marley, you're a very smart person. I'd like to hear your opinion. Charlotte smiled. I'm a layman. If an expert like you can't understand it, how can I? You're just saying. Just saying. What's wrong with that? Linda shook Charlotte's arm. Her softness rubbed against Charlotte's arm without restraint, as if she wanted to melt his arm. She was acting like a spoiled child to a sister. Since they were sisters, what did such intimate contact matter? Charlotte thought about this question very seriously, and he thought about it on a deeper level than Linda's question. The Knights Hospitaller set up their headquarters and the Holy Palace here for a reason. Could it be related to this sun god temple? The people of the Stone Age did not have the ability to build this temple, but if it wasn't the people of the Stone Age, who could have built it? And why was it built? He was so focused on this problem that he ignored the harassment that Linda brought to him. However, Linda's harassment only increased, and it kept on accompanying his thinking. At a subtle moment, Linda suddenly stopped moving. Her softness and Charlotte's arm were still in the position of holding a hot dog between a bun and a bun, but her eyes moved straight to the area between Charlotte's legs. There was a cloud of smoke rising from that area, as if an umbrella had been opened up. Linda was dumbfounded, and her heart was in turmoil. Didn't he say he was gay? Why is he reacting like this? Charlotte was still thinking about the possible connection between the Sun God Temple and the Knights Hospitaller. He did not notice that the woman beside him was staring at him in shock. Linda tightened her grip on his arm and shook it gently. As she shook it, she observed the obvious spot. A thought-provoking smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She looked like a baby who had a secret in her heart, but the baby did not say it. Sigh. Charlotte sighed. Sorry, I know nothing about the history of this temple. I don't have any opinion. You saw that, Linda said. What? Charlotte looked at her, puzzled. Linda pointed at the place she had been observing, and said nothing. Charlotte suddenly looked down. At that moment, he wanted to slap himself. Yes. Linda cleared her throat and said in a very honest tone, Don't you think you should give me an explanation? What explanation? Are you gay? Of course, Charlotte said. Then why did you? Linda pointed at the place again. Charlotte followed and said, Where's the toilet? I've been holding it in for a long time. Linda was speechless. Wait for me. I'll go to a place with no one. Charlotte pulled his hand away from Linda's arm and chest and hurriedly ran to a place with no one. Linda looked at Charlotte's back and smiled. You can continue to pretend to be gay, but I'll make you show your face. Let's wait and see. Hiding behind a rock, Charlotte could not help but smile bitterly. He unzipped his zipper to solve the problem. He actually did not need it, but he did not want Linda to run over to check if there was any liquid on the ground and then continue to ask if he was gay. Women were sometimes easy to deceive, but sometimes they were hard to deceive. After solving the problem, Charlotte zipped up his zipper. But just as he was about to leave, his eyes suddenly fell on a pool of water on the ground. He could not look away. It was the bottom of a stone pillar. After the liquid had washed away the soil, there was a square pattern at the bottom of the stone pillar hidden in the soil. It was not unusual for square patterns to appear in some historical site. In fact, it was very common. However, this square pattern was different because it was the pattern of an ancient Audiobook. Although it wasn't 100% gentle, there were some details that made Xiaolei certain of it. Charlotte was dumbfounded. What's going on? Mr. Marley, what are you doing there? Linda's voice was heard, as well as her footsteps. She had indeed come to investigate. Charlotte hurriedly dug the soil with his feet and covered the pattern of the box. But at the same time, he also awakened the X-ray ability of his left eye to see through the bottom of the stone pillar. Unfortunately, there were no other clues other than this pattern. Linda walked over with a smile. Mr. Marley, what are you doing? Charlotte retracted his gaze and walked towards her. Let's go back. Go back? You're going back so soon? You haven't even finished visiting this temple. Linda was very surprised. Charlotte said, I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable. I want to go back and rest. How about this? Can you give me some professional information about the Sun God Temple? I'm very curious. I want to take a look. Of course. All right, since that's the case, let's go back. Linda came up and took Charlotte's arm. You're not feeling well. I'll support you. Charlotte was speechless. Before leaving, Charlotte turned back to look at the stone pillar. He had found out the hidden secret of the Sun God Temple by peeing, and now he could not wait to go back and read the bronze treasure book he had snatched from William Arthur. Chapter 874. In fact, if Linda had not suddenly woken up in the wee hours of the morning, he would have started reading the Book of Iron at that time. Later, after talking to Linda, he had a new idea, which was to donate to the Maltese Antiquities Protection Bureau and visit the Sun God Temple in the name of an official. He had found the pattern of the ancient alloy box in the Sun God Temple, which made his desire to read the Book of Iron even stronger. Back at the embassy, Charlotte could not wait to enter his room, closed the door and windows, and took out the Book of Iron. The Book of Iron that he had taken from William Arthur was actually the same as the bronze book in his hand, just with an additional title. When he opened the Book of Iron, he saw those magical words. Some looked like a clump of grass, some looked like tadpoles, and some looked like human heads with noses and eyes. However, they were no longer mysterious to him. With the experience of reading them last time, there would not be any new difficulties this time. He read page by page, and all the words were stored in his brain. He could see through these words, and what he saw was a magical syllable. He closed his eyes, and the pattern of the compass formed by the floor tiles in the underground tomb of Hua Nation appeared in his mind once again. It was complete and flawless. The mysterious runes on the art of iron fused with the pattern on the compass, forming a larger circular pattern. It looked like a compass with runes carved all over it. Just like last time, Chinese characters appeared in the center of the compass. You are the only one who can turn it. Charlotte's consciousness suddenly activated, and the mysterious energy awakened. The compass in his brain spun rapidly, and at the same time, an ancient and distant voice appeared in his mind. It was the same situation. He was not unfamiliar with this voice, because it was the syllable hidden in the mysterious words in the Book of Iron. The energy hidden in his brain was like the needle of a record player, and the rune-covered compass in his brain was the disc. When the two were combined, the originally undecipherable voice in his mind could be read. You might not believe it, but just as I was about to end my life, I saw a woman. I have had countless women in my life, but I can tell you with certainty that no woman in this world is more beautiful than her. She was perfect. Whether it was her appearance, figure, or temperament, she was perfect. At that moment, I felt that she was a goddess. She would bring me the answers I wanted. She would even fulfill all my wishes. I watched her as she walked toward me, her body weightless. I began to suspect that she was an illusion, but she was so real. I spoke to her, begging her to answer the questions in my heart, but she only smiled at me and left. I couldn't accept it. I wanted to catch up to her, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up to her. She moved further and further away from me, and finally disappeared from my sight. There was no trace of her in the ice and snow, but I didn't give up. I kept searching in the direction where she left. I longed to see her again one day, somewhere. I don't know how many places I've been to, and I don't know how many years I've been searching. Just as I was about to give up, she finally appeared. What puzzled me was that the first time I saw her, she looked like a phantom, but this time, she had a real body. What was the same was that she was still perfect. I thought that this meeting would be a beautiful beginning, but it wasn't. She attacked me, and I was injured. The box was broken. Although I managed to escape, my injuries were too severe. It was like an absurd dream to me. Many years ago, I wanted to end my life, but she appeared and gave me hope. Then, she shattered everything with her own hands. I'm going to die. I'm going to build a grave for myself. I'm going to swallow the broken box into my stomach. This is what I'm leaving behind for you. I'm pinning my hopes on you. I hope that you can solve the mystery that I couldn't solve. Also, I have a request. If you meet her, please kill her. She shouldn't exist. Her life is evil. I once saw her slaughter a tribe of 1,000 people. I'm the only one, and you are the only one. I didn't do it, but you must do it. This is our common mission. Time doesn't just move forward, it permeates. Goodbye, the only one. This was the entire content of the Book of Iron. According to the Post, the content of the Book of Iron was connected to the content of the Bronze Grimoire. It was indeed a complete bronze CD. After listening to the content of this bronze CD, some of the mysteries that couldn't be solved before were solved. However, Charlotte didn't feel excited at all. There was only a heavy feeling in his heart. It was as if there was a heavy piece of rusty basalt in his heart. In the holy city of Jerusalem, under the temple of Jesus, he found the corpse of an old man. He also found a large amount of ancient alloy fragments in that old man's corpse. At that time, he didn't know the identity of that old man, and even more so, he didn't know why that old man had so many ancient alloy fragments. Now that the mystery was solved, he didn't think that the old man was actually the only one who left behind the bronze grimoire. He said that he had lived for a very long time, even through the Ice Age. He was almost an immortal existence. His long life even made him tired of living, and he wanted to end his long life by committing suicide. Then, he met her, a shadow which then turned into a real body. Wasn't he talking about Zhu Xianyue? Charlotte secretly thought in his heart. This thought made his scalp go numb, and a chill ran down his spine. The prehistoric one didn't mention her name, but he completely believed that the prehistoric one was talking about Zhu Xianyue. Now, it seemed that Zhu Xianyue was just a name from a certain period of time. She had a different name before or after that period of time. Maybe it was recorded in history, or maybe it wasn't. The prehistoric one didn't need to remind him that she was an evil existence, because he had seen with his own eyes how she prayed. There was no need to prove it. Time doesn't just move forward, it also permeates. What does this sentence mean? Charlotte thought hard. Is the prehistoric one trying to use this sentence to hint to me that there are really different dimensions in this world? The world that I'm in and the world inside the box are obviously not the same world. Is this the basis of what he said? The hole in his brain suddenly opened up. The world 100 years ago was real, the world now was also real, and the world 100 years later was definitely real. 100 years might be too long, but if the unit of time was set to 1 second, who could say that the world a second ago was not real? Who could say that the world a second later would disappear? Humans were animals that lived on their senses, and they were used to defining what they could feel as real, but this world wasn't that simple. Other than the world of the past, the world of the present, and the world of the future, there should be a world of light, a world of darkness, a world of thought, a world of non-thought, and so on. If the universe was a chaotic circle, humans were probably just a grain of sand that formed this circle. Humans' understanding of the universe was probably less than 1 in 100 million. Letting go of one's thoughts would give birth to wings and fly endlessly. But the person who had the thoughts was still sitting in the room, an insignificant existence. After who knew how long, Charlotte couldn't help but laugh. The bronze cooldown left by the prehistoric one had indeed solved many of his puzzles, but it had also brought him new ones. He found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach the final answer. It was like there was an ocean in front of him, and he was just a small boat navigating this ocean with difficulty. Sometimes the boat that sought knowledge capsized just like that. I already know why the ancient alloy box broke and appeared in different places. I know that the old man under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was the prehistoric one. I also know that Zhu Xianyue existed in the prehistoric one. But who is the black-robed man? He and Zhu Xianyue seem to be the same kind, but the two of them seem to be enemies. Why is that? Zhu Xianyue is not normal now, but the black-robed man seems to be normal. If he wanted to snatch the ancient alloy box, I had no way to stop him, but he didn't do so. He didn't even think of snatching my last AE capsule. Why is that? So far, I've come into contact with a lot of clues about the ancient alloy and Zhu Xianyue and the prehistoric one, but the most crucial AE capsule has not been found. Is it not important? Or is it because of something else? One why after another, Charlotte's mind was divided into two parts. One part was clear and the other part was confused. Mr. Marley, are you in the room? Linda's voice came from outside the door. Charlotte's thoughts were interrupted, and he glanced at the door. Very easily, he saw Linda standing at the door. She seemed to have just done some exercise, and she was wearing tight stretch cotton exercise pants and a fitness vest. The white stretch cotton exercise pants and vest were like a layer of skin that clung to her body, and the protruding points on top of her full and firm breasts were clearly visible. Her buttocks and thighs were not covered by fabric, and all the lines and indentations were clearly visible. She was so mature and attractive. In addition, the sweat from the exercise had wet the fabric. How could he look at it directly? A few seconds ago, his mind was full of ancient alloy, AE capsule, Zhu Xianyue, and the black-robed man, but in just a few seconds, his mind was full of that and that. Mr. Marley? Linda reached out and knocked on the door. I know you're inside, open the door. Charlotte's head started to hurt. He knew what Linda was doing here at this time. He wanted to solve the world's most difficult riddle, and the woman outside the door only wanted to solve one riddle, and that was whether he was gay or not. Mr. Marley? Linda seemed to have lost her patience. Hey, what are you doing there? Giovanna suddenly walked over. Her upper body was wrapped in bandages, and her walking posture was a little strange. I'm looking for Mr. Marley. Linda subconsciously covered the triangular area between her legs. He has something to do and went out. If you have anything to say, you can tell me. I can tell him, Giovanna said. Then there's no need. Goodbye. Linda pouted and left. Charlotte let out a sigh of relief. It felt good to have a knight's protection. Chapter 875. Night fell quietly. Charlotte lay on the rooftop of the embassy and looked up at the vast night sky, quietly thinking about a new problem. The prehistoric one experienced the Ice Age. He said that he was the only person left in the world. He was lonely and even wanted to commit suicide. Later, Zhu Xianyue appeared. He began to search for Zhu Xianyue. He said that he didn't know how many places he had searched and how long he had searched. When he saw Zhu Xianyue again, he found that Zhu Xianyue already had a physical body. He also saw Zhu Xianyue slaughtering a tribe of thousands. Although he didn't say how much time had passed, did it mean that the Ice Age had passed and humans had appeared again? Did Zhu Xianyue not kill the prehistoric one because he was the only human in the world? Did she see him as a seed? This conjecture was very likely true because Zhu Xianyue didn't kill the prehistoric one in such a long time. After she had a physical body, she attacked him. From her point of view, she had already cultivated a forest. Why would she need to keep a seed? There was another problem that he couldn't understand no matter how he thought about it. That was, Zhu Xianyue broke the ancient alloy box in the battle with the prehistoric one, and the prehistoric one escaped with the fragment. He seemed to have thrown away a part and swallowed a part. Who made the compass that searched for the ancient alloy parts? Was it him? Or was it Zhu Xianyue? Where was the last part? What was certain was that the compass that searched for the ancient alloy parts was definitely not made by the Ming Dynasty emperor, because the manufacturing industry at that time couldn't have reached that level. Including the sun god temple on the sacred mountain, it couldn't have been built by the primitive tribes more than 10,000 years ago. Somehow, there seemed to be a force controlling human history, and there was no lack of such traces in this world. The pyramids in Egypt, the disappeared Mayans, and the disappeared Atlantean civilization. Charlotte's thoughts became active again. In the Mayan calendar and legend, the world would go through 5 cycles of destruction and rebirth, and each cycle was a solar age. The first generation of humans were giants, and they were destroyed by hunger. Secondly, the human race was destroyed by a huge fire. The third generation were the ape-men. They were destroyed by killing each other. The fourth generation of humans was the Atlantean civilization. They were destroyed by the Great Flood. Now, humans were in the 5th cycle of rebirth and destruction. The end of this cycle would be the end of the world. The Mayans predicted the end of the world, December 21, 2012, but it did not come true. However, before this prophecy, the Mayans' 4 prophecies were all accurate. The Mayans' own destruction. The appearance of airplanes and cars, the approximate date of the birth and death of Hitler, the great devil of the world, and the dates of the outbreak of World War I and World War II. If one were to look at the Mayan prophecy from the perspective of the first 4 prophecies, it was strangely accurate. However, judging from the last prophecy, it wasn't real. The previous 4 prophecies might just be a coincidence. Was it really just a coincidence? For a civilization that can accurately predict when it will perish, how could its prophecy be a coincidence? Perhaps it wasn't a coincidence, but a force or a powerful existence intervened in the cycle of destruction and rebirth of the 5th human civilization. Xia Lei was completely lost in the mysterious events as his imagination ran wild. Footsteps could be heard. Charlotte's thoughts were suddenly interrupted. He looked over. Under the moonlight, Linda walked towards him from the staircase. She was still wearing the same white stretch cotton gym shorts, tank top, and a brown blanket. She wrapped the blanket lightly, as if she had just finished working out and was using the blanket to absorb her sweat. Linda walked to Charlotte's side and sat beside Charlotte with the blanket. She didn't say anything and just looked at Charlotte. Charlotte smelled the faint scent of perfume mixed with sweat from her body. This scent was a kind of temptation for men. "What are you looking at?" Linda broke the silence between the two. Charlotte pointed to the sky. "The stars. I also like the stars. It's deep and mysterious, just like you," she said. "Just like me." Linda smiled. "You're not a clothing manufacturer, right? You donated $500,000 to the Maltese Antiquities Protection Bureau in my name. This is not something a clothing manufacturer can do. Also, you killed those 3 bald men. You saved me, but you didn't tell me." In the castle, she had fainted and didn't see Akiko Tsukino at all. She didn't even know that Von Karen and William Arthur were dead, but she believed in her intuition that Charlotte killed those 3 bald men and saved her. Charlotte just smiled. He didn't want to answer this question. "You saved me 3 times. I want to repay you, but I don't know how," she said, and the corner of her eyes moved to where Charlotte was. The story of the hero saving the beauty and the beauty repaying him with her body was also quite popular in Western society. But the problem was that Mr. Marley was gay, so such a beautiful thing couldn't happen to him. Charlotte smiled. "We're friends. What's there to repay? That you are safe is the best reward." "Are you really gay?" The scene she saw in the sun god temple during the day appeared in Linda's mind. Charlotte looked very serious. "Yes, I'm gay. There's nothing to hide." "Are you discriminating against gay people?" Linda suddenly removed the blanket wrapped around her body and leaned down on Charlotte's body. Without waiting for Charlotte to struggle, her lips kissed his lips. Her entire body was burning with passion, and her movements were also very wild. Caught off guard, Charlotte's body entered a state in the blink of an eye, and it was very obvious. By the time he reacted and wanted to use that ability to control it, his secret had already been discovered by Linda, and his weakness had also been caught by Linda. The two of them suddenly stopped, but the air seemed to be filled with the smell of gunpowder, and a small spark would cause an explosion. Under the moonlight, the woman in the elastic cotton gym outfit had all the right curve. Although she was still wearing clothes, the clothes were almost no different from her skin. The bumps on the plump, the protrusion and indentation under the perky buttocks were very clearly revealed. It was mature to the extreme and extremely seductive. Charlotte's heart was impulsive, and he even wanted to lift that bit of cloth, and then, "You really aren't gay." Linda was very excited, and a burning flame burned in her azure blue eyes. Charlotte was extremely embarrassed, but he finally controlled that impulse. "Linda, fine, I admit I'm not gay, but I have a woman, and I don't want to betray her. Do you understand what I mean?" Linda was stunned for a moment, and the flame in her eyes seemed to be extinguished by cold water. "I treat you as a good friend," said Charlotte. Linda climbed up from Charlotte's body and forced a smile. "If you had said you had a woman, I wouldn't. I've already arranged it for you. You can go back to Italy tonight," said Charlotte. "I'm not going back. I still want to find the Book of Iron." "Of course," Linda refused. She said, "You can refuse me, but you can't order me around. I'm going to stay in Malta, and I must find the Book of Iron." "You will find it, I promise you." "No. I've already made it very clear." Linda was angry. "You can't order me around, I'm not going back." Charlotte suddenly climbed up from the ground, hugged her waist, and took the initiative to kiss her lips. "You?" Excitement and shyness swept over her, and Linda closed her eyes. But just as she closed her eyes, Charlotte's palm struck her carotid artery. The strength was not very strong, but it was just enough to knock her out. "I'm sorry, you will only cause trouble and danger here. Go back to Italy, and live your life in peace is what you should do. Just pretend we never met," Charlotte said to her, and then kissed her forehead. A quarter of an hour later, 2 SUVs stopped in front of the embassy. Charlotte put Linda, who was wrapped in a blanket, into one of the cars, and then said to Alessio, who was driving, "Alessio, take her back to Sicily safely. Also, there is something in the blanket. Give it to her when she wakes up." The thing he put in the blanket was the Book of Iron. He had already interpreted the contents of the Book of Iron, and he no longer needed it. In this world, only he could interpret it, so even if the Book of Iron returned to the Vatican, it wouldn't affect anything. "Well, I'll come back after I take her back to Sicily." Alessio didn't say much, started the car, and left. Charlotte got into the second car. "Let's go." Siamu started the car and left the gate of the embassy, and then drove in the direction of the port. "The FA organization has been silent for so long, have you collected any new information?" In the car, Charlotte asked aloud. "No," Siamu said, "but this is normal. The Knights Hospitaller is almost an invisible empire, and there is never a lack of fanatical believers who are not afraid of death. Coupled with the funds and equipment you gave, even the FA organization is a bit afraid. I'm not surprised that they chose to take advantage of this opportunity at this time. The Knights Hospitaller have already obtained information about the FA organization's headquarters, but they didn't tell me, and even asked me to come in person. The Knights Hospitaller have never been friends. Maybe the Knights Hospitaller and the FA organization have reached some secret agreement to deal with me together, said Charlotte, his eyes flashing a trace of coldness. Boss, if what you said is true, what should we do? Siamu looked a little worried. It was already impossible to deal with the Knights Hospitaller. If the Knights Hospitaller and the FA organization joined forces, it would be terrible for the Zodiac team. Believe me, there will be a way. Charlotte looked very relaxed. Siamu smiled. He stepped on the accelerator, and the car suddenly accelerated to the port. At the port, on a yacht. Siamu and Boss are here, said Yelena, who was looking at the road with binoculars. Several people came out of the cabin. They were Akiko Tsukino and Gyumi Khan and Erdemo. I thought Boss would bring our new partners with him, but he didn't, said Yelena. New partners? Do you mean the 4 female knights? And Gyumi Khan had a smirk on his face. If it's true, I will raise both hands in approval. 2 pairs of twins, haha, our team is complete again, and the appearance has also improved. Don't let your imagination run wild. Akiko Tsukino said lightly, the 4 female knights are not your cup of tea. They are real classical knights. They are the boss's guardians and the one who warms the bed. And Gyumi Khan. Chapter 876. The yacht left the dock and headed for the magnificent Mediterranean Sea. There were many yachts like this on the sea, carrying bikini girls, champagne and red wine. The rich usually liked to enjoy life at night. Who would pay attention to the occasional oddity? At the same time, 4 guests arrived at a hotel in Valletta. 3 women and 1 man, all very young. 2 of the 3 women were twins who looked exactly the same, and the other was also very beautiful. The man surrounded by the 3 women was an Asian man. He was also handsome and charming. The Asian man seemed to be drunk. He walked unsteadily and relied on the support of the 3 women to not fall to the ground. Mr. Xia, why do you drink so much? A woman said. That's right, you just arrived in Malta and you're already drunk. How can you be like this? A woman said. The Asian man chuckled and suddenly reached out to grab a woman's chest and pinched it in an extremely vulgar manner. Ah, you're too much. The woman who was taken advantage of was very embarrassed and annoyed. The Asian man then grabbed the other woman's buttock. You really are a pervert. The woman whose butt was grabbed blushed. She reached out to hit the man's hand, but the man's hand reached under her skirt and grabbed it again. Many people in the hotel lobby looked over curiously at the 4 of them. The men were envious of the Asian man's sexual bliss, while the women couldn't help but look at the man carefully. They had rarely seen such a good-looking Asian man. A woman went to get a room and only asked for a suite. Then the 3 women surrounded the Asian man and walked to the elevator, talking as they walked. Mr. Xia, don't touch me. I'll satisfy you later, okay? Don't talk. It'll be bad if those people find out. No problem, Mr. Xia's men will be here soon. We're safe. The elevator door opened and the 3 women helped the Asian youth into the elevator. The front hall of the hotel was suddenly filled with discussion. That Asian is really lucky. Can he stand 3 beautiful women? He can't stand it. How about we go help him? Ha ha ha, don't joke around. Those 3 women are obviously of the highest quality. Do you think anyone can sleep with them? Didn't you see the limited edition Patek Philippe watch on that man's wrist? That watch is worth $500,000. Those 3 women are willing to sleep with him because he's rich. He doesn't seem to be just rich. He's also very handsome. A woman seemed to be fighting for the Asian youth. Amidst the murmurs, a bald man walked out of the front hall's door. He took out his phone, dialed a number, and said excitedly, "Charlotte has appeared! He's at the Mediterranean Hotel in Valletta. I also saw the women from the Gray and Russo families, but I didn't see Giovanna. Only Rosa, Stella, and Teresa. All right, I'll keep an eye on them." After ending the call, a sneer appeared on the bald man's face. "That guy is really bold. He actually came to Malta." On the other side, the Asian youth helped the Asian youth into a room. As soon as the door closed, the Asian youth rubbed his face and took off a human skin mask. She was not a man, but the Giovanna that the bald man had mentioned did not show up. Because of her chest injury, her chest was wrapped in bandages, so she could pretend to be a man. Tonight's operation did not only involve Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac Squad, but also the women of the Gray and Russo families. As new members of the Zodiac Squad, they were obviously not suitable to participate in the battle due to their injuries. However, it was not a problem for them to put on a show in the hotel where the Knight's Hospitaller had spies. Teresa quickly walked to the TV, then plugged a USB into the port behind the TV and played the audio file on the USB. Oh, yes. Giovanna's voice. "Mr. Xia, you're so powerful. I can't stand it anymore." Stella's voice. "Even if you can't stand it, you have to raise your butt, haha." Charlotte's voice. "You're so bad. My skin is already broken, and you don't even know how to be gentle." Yes. Teresa's voice. "Rosa, why are you hiding to the side? Raise your butt and let me spank you a few times." Charlotte's voice. "You're so bad I won't do it." Pa. Amidst the chaotic sounds, the four women blushed. "I can't believe that we actually cooperated with him to record this kind of audio file," Giovanna said with a red face. "It's fake and not real." "I don't think it's anything," Stella said, but her face was also red. Teresa was in a daze. She seemed to be recalling the scene when Charlotte came to find them to record this audio file in the afternoon. "Enough, we have to get out of here quickly," Rosa said. The four women took off their clothes, revealing the clothes of the hotel staff. They quickly left the room and hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the doorknob when they went out. Just as the four women entered the staff passage, the yacht stopped on the sea. It was motionless and had no lights, like an abandoned ship without an owner. However, there were 5 people lying on the deck, all holding binoculars and looking in the direction of the sacred mountain. A group of lights lit up in the direction of the sacred mountain and quickly moved over the sea. It was a fleet of more than 10 speedboats. They entered the Mediterranean Sea from the foot of the sacred mountain and then sped along the coastline in the direction of Valletta. "They're moving out," Yelena said. "We should move out as well." Charlotte climbed up from the deck. "Boss, are you sure you're only bringing Akiko Tsukino?" On the deck, Angumi Khan looked at Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino, who had already put on their diving suits. There was a hint of worry in his eyes. Charlotte said, "Someone has to stay behind to provide support. If there's a firefight, you guys know what to do." Angumi Khan grinned and then glanced at the ammunition box containing the Hellhound cannon on the deck. "They'd better not do that, or I'll blow this place up. Sayamu, remember to contact Giovanna and the others and ask them to retreat in time," Charlotte urged. Sayamu nodded. "Don't worry, boss." Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino jumped into the sea and then drove the 2 submersible motorcycles to the bottom of the sacred mountain precipice. 10 minutes later, the 2 arrived at the bottom of the precipice. Sure enough, at the foot of the mountain, Charlotte found a waterway that extended into the belly of the mountain. The riverbed of the waterway was very deep, about 20 meters, and could completely accommodate a yacht. Even a small cargo ship would not have a problem entering. Charlotte pointed to the depths of the waterway for Akiko Tsukino, then controlled the submersible motorcycles to enter the entrance of the waterway and slowly moved forward. The waves surged above their heads, and it was completely dark. Charlotte did not dare to turn on the lights. He used his left eye to observe the environment in the dark. This was also the reason why he walked in front. He had to lead the way for Akiko Tsukino. After a depth of about 100 meters, the waterway came to an end, and there was light above their heads. Charlotte's left eye twitched slightly, and he quickly saw the situation on the shore. It was a dock in the belly of the mountain. There was a yacht, a cargo ship, and a few speedboats docked at the dock. The dozen or so speedboats that had just left the dock were obviously not all of them. Behind the dock was a man-made platform. At the end of the platform was a stone staircase that extended deep into the belly of the mountain. At the top of the staircase stood a man in a black robe without a hood. It was a bald white man. Charlotte's eyes locked on the bald white man. He quickly recognized him. The bald white man was one of the black-robed gunmen who chased him and Linda in Sicily the night before. Charlotte retracted his gaze. He fixed the submersible motorcycles on the rocks under the riverbed, then pointed to the surface for Akiko Tsukino, and told her there was a target up there with sign language. Akiko Tsukino nodded. After fixing the submersible motorcycles, she followed Charlotte upstream. During this process, a shuriken appeared in her hand. Charlotte slowly floated up against the stone wall of the dock. He could see the bald white man, but the bald white man could not see him at all. He gently pulled out the gun with a silencer, ready to kill the bald white man. But just as he pulled out the gun, Akiko Tsukino suddenly emerged from the water and waved her shuriken. The bald white man on guard did not have time to react, and the shuriken pierced his forehead. Akiko Tsukino's shuriken was dipped in poison. He fell to the ground and twitched for a while before he calmed down. One fatal blow. She was indeed a ninja who was good at assassination. The two climbed up to the dock. Charlotte took off the oxygen tank on his back, then took off the black robe of the bald white man and put it on himself. At the same time, Akiko Tsukino also installed several military explosive devices on several speedboats and yachts on the dock. After dealing with the bodies, Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino entered the stone stairway. The stone walls in the passage were lit by oil lamps and the light was dim. The situation here was similar to that of the old castle. There were no electric lights and there were no modern surveillance equipment. He subconsciously touched the gold pass that he copied from Arthur. He was a little puzzled. There is no electricity here at all. Don't these gold passes need to be inserted into a card reader? Just show it to the guards? Sneaking into the headquarters of the Knights of the Hospital was a very risky move. If he was not careful, he would be doomed. It was not that he did not think about the risks, but he had no other choice. He had to get the protective suits from the Knights of the Hospital. As for how much the Knights of the Hospital knew about the ancient alloy and the secrets of AE, he did not care. William Arthur said that entering the Holy Palace required a gold pass and the signature of the commander, Angelo, but he did not think that he needed those things. He had lured away at least half of the elites of the Knights of the Hospital. Even if he was discovered, it was not impossible for him and Akiko Tsukino, as well as the support of Angumi Khan and the others. The passage was long and winding, and it was impossible to see what was ahead. As they approached a corner, they suddenly heard footsteps in front of them. Charlotte pulled out a military knife from his waist. Akiko Tsukino pressed Charlotte's hand. Chapter 877. On the other side of the corner, a man in a black robe was walking towards them. In his hand was a Gale assault rifle made by the Thunder Horse military factory. Seeing the Gale assault rifle in the hands of the black-robed gunman, Charlotte could not help but feel angry. He had given the Knights Hospitaller $50 million and a lot of excellent equipment. Judging from the reaction of the Knights Hospitaller tonight, the other party still wanted to ambush and capture him to get what they wanted. They did not want to go to war with the FA organization at all. On one hand, there was the choice of going to war with a large independent agent organization, and on the other hand, there was the choice of dealing with a Chinese businessman. The Knights Hospitaller had obviously made the most beneficial choice for them. Akiko Tsukino let go of Charlotte's hand and then gave him a sign. Charlotte nodded. When the black-robed gunman approached the corner, he suddenly walked out from the corner. The black-robed gunman subconsciously raised his gun, but it was just a subconscious action. When he saw that the person who suddenly walked out from behind the corner was also wearing a black robe, he did not raise his gun. But a second later, he noticed that something was wrong. His hand raised his gun again, and his mouth opened, ready to shout. A samurai sword suddenly pierced through Charlotte's armpit, instantly pierced into his mouth, and then came out from the back of his head. With a sword through the head, the black-robed gunman fell to the ground. Akiko Tsukino sheathed the blood-stained samurai sword, then quickly pulled out the black robe from the black-robed gunman's body and put it on her. However, it was a little too big. The two threw the body into the drainage ditch inside the stone stairway and then continued to move forward. It did not take long before they saw a row of stables cut into the stone wall, where warhorses were kept. The warhorses' excrement was excreted through the drainage pipes, and they made the air here very smelly. At the end of the stone stairway was a huge natural cave. It was dozens of meters high at the top, and almost 300 or 400 meters deep at the bottom. It was shaped like a top, sharp at the top and wide at the bottom. A new stone stairway extended down from the cliff, with a guardrail on one side. Standing at the edge of the precipice and looking down, one could see many man-made rooms. The bottom of the cave was wide and flat, with an ancient Roman-style church in the middle. It looked majestic and magnificent, with lights shining through the doors and windows, giving it a mysterious atmosphere. Other than the church, there were other buildings at the bottom of the cavern. Most of them were functional buildings, such as a canteen, a warehouse, and a medical room. Every building had the emblem of the Knights Hospitaller. They surrounded the church like stars surrounding the moon, and the overall scale looked like a miniature town. That church should be the real headquarters of the Knights Hospitaller, Charlotte said. Let's go down. Akiko Tsukino just nodded and followed Charlotte down the stone stairs on the cliff. She knew it was dangerous, but she didn't care. Not all of the stone houses beside the stone staircase were empty. Some of them were occupied. However, most of them were women and children, and very few of them were men. The people in the stone houses did not pay much attention to Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino, who were passing by their door. Some only glanced at them, and some did not even bother to look at them. However, even if they looked at Xia Lei and Tsukinoenko, they would not suspect anything. They would think that the lighting in the passageway of the stone staircase was very dim, and it was almost impossible to see their faces clearly. Coupled with the fact that Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino were wearing black robes, the people in the stone houses naturally regarded them as members of the Knights Hospitaller. Arriving at the bottom of the cavern, Charlotte went straight to the church. His left eye maintained its X-ray vision, vigilantly observing the surroundings. At the bottom, Akiko Tsukino separated from him and dived into the darkness. This was her style. If she were to move around under the light, her strength would be reduced. As they approached the church, an extremely burly man in a black robe suddenly walked out of a house next to it. He was also holding a Gale assault rifle in his hand. In addition to the octagonal cross emblem of the Knights Hospitaller, there was also a sign with the words Izar written in Italian on the house behind him. The burly man's body also exuded a strong smell of alcohol. "Hey, brother, didn't you go to catch the Chinese? Why are you back?" The burly man in the black robe asked loudly. Charlotte said in Italian, "There are enough people. They told me to come back." "Which night?" the burly man in the black robe asked. At this time, two black-robed gunmen in the same attire walked out of the Azar. Now, Charlotte was almost certain that these black-robed gunmen were the so-called paladins that Arthur mentioned. They were the most elite armed forces of the Knights Hospitaller. "It's Gaddafi," Charlotte said. "What? Who?" The burly man did not hear clearly. But at this moment, the two black-robed gunmen who had just walked out of the Azaru fell to the ground. The burly gunman in the black robe suddenly turned around, and in that instant, a samurai sword pierced through his chest and came out from his back. The moment he fell to the ground, he saw that the person who had just poured wine for him had also fallen to the ground, and a large area of the floor was stained red with blood. That was the last thing he saw in his life. Akiko Tsukino, who appeared in the darkness, lifted the legs of the black-robed gunman and dragged him into the Azaru. Charlotte withdrew his gaze from her, and then walked towards the door of the church. When he walked to the door, Akiko Tsukino had already left the Azaru and was sneaking towards another lit room. She was cleaning up potential threats for Charlotte. Charlotte's strategy of luring the tiger away from the mountain had transferred most of the elite paladins of the Knights Hospitaller away, and the rest would be cleaned up in the way she was best at. She wanted to create the best environment for Charlotte's operation. This was actually the reason why Charlotte did not bring anyone but her. However, Angumi Khan and Sayamu also had something to do, and that was to deal with the paladins who had left. This was Charlotte's plan, flawless. The door of the church was closed, and Charlotte pushed the door open and walked in. The hall used for prayer was empty, and under the main wall of the hall stood a cross. Jesus, who was nailed to the cross, looked down at Charlotte, who walked through the door, and his eyes were full of pity. Charlotte quickly walked through the hall and entered the inner area of the church. His left eye quickly swept through the area, and he quickly locked on to a room. It was a study, and a black-robed gunman with a Gale assault rifle was standing at the door. In the study, a bald old man was using the office phone on the desk to make a call. This office was not lit by oil lamps but by light bulbs. There was also a computer on the desk. This was the only modern scene that Charlotte had seen so far. The power source could be sent from the top of the mountain, or it could be a device that always generated electricity here. No matter what the reason was, it was not important. Charlotte walked to the door of the study. The black-robed gunman heard the sound and suddenly looked over. A cold light flashed past, and when it stopped again, an Italian army knife had been placed on the left eye of the black-robed gunman. It pierced from his left eye to his brain. The black-robed man did not have time to say a word or even make a sound before he fell to the ground. Charlotte quickly walked forward, reached out his hand to support the body of the black-robed gunman, and then slowly put him on the ground. After dealing with the guard at the door, Charlotte was not in a hurry to go in. He stood at the door, pretending to be a guard, and at the same time used his left eye to see through the old man in the study, and used the lip-reading spell to read the old man's words. "You want peace? No problem. We never thought of starting a war with you. Charlotte, that's because of Charlotte. Your people, Yamasa, killed his people, and that made him lose his mind. Of course, we need a truce agreement, and we will also give you compensation for our previous actions against Yamasa. $500, no more. We will not interfere with you and Charlotte, and you will not interfere with the Knights of the Hospital and Charlotte. Cooperate? Let me think about it. Goodbye, my friend." The bald old man hung up the phone. At this time, Charlotte almost did not have to guess. He already knew the identity of the bald old man in front of him. This bald old man was not a stranger, but the current leader of the Knights of the Hospital, Angilio. The Knights of the Hospital had two leaders, and the outside world only knew the puppet leader, Walton, who was the one who talked to him. Obviously, Walton would not be here. He was in Rome, Italy, in the Palace of Malta. Here, this was the real headquarters of the Knights of the Hospital, and of course, only the real leader would be here. "You want to cooperate with me at this time?" In the study, Angilio sneered. "We are about to catch Charlotte. Do I still need to cooperate with you? I am willing to give you $5 million, but that is just to end the war." Charlotte's heart was filled with anger. He gave the Knights of the Hospital $50 million of operation funds to hire mercenaries and armed groups to fight against the FA organization. Now it seemed that the Knights of the Hospital had no sincerity to cooperate with him at all. Not only did they embezzle his money and equipment, but they also tried to catch him again and again. His cooperation with the Knights of the Hospital was undoubtedly asking a tiger for its skin, but now he was going to remove this tiger's skin. Charlotte reached for the doorknob, pushed the door open and walked in. "What are you doing in here?" Angilio looked at Charlotte, who came in through the door in surprise. Then he saw the body on the ground. He suddenly realized something and hurriedly reached for a drawer. Charlotte leaped over the desk and kicked Angilio in the chest. Angilio dodged and punched at Charlotte's ear. The bald Angilio was a little old, but it didn't seem to affect his physical function. His movements were fast and fierce, and he had terrible strength. The power and speed of the punch that he threw out with all his might was not the slightest bit inferior to those so-called boxing champions. However, his opponent was Charlotte. Xiaolei leaned back on the desk and dodged Angilio's fist. At the same time, he placed the Viper pistol with a silencer under Angilio's ribs. Angilio's body froze. His fist was still in the position of missing, but he didn't even dare to retract his fist, because he was not sure if the gunman who broke into the Holy Church of the Knights of the Hospital would shoot him. Charlotte slowly got up from the desk, and with one hand still pointing the gun at Angilio, he said, "Angilio, we finally meet. Who are you?" Angilio didn't seem to panic. He looked very calm. Charlotte reached out and tore off the human skin mask on his face. "It's you." Angilio was shocked on the spot. He thought of many possibilities, but he never thought that the person in front of him would be Charlotte. Chapter 878. Charlotte jumped down from the desk and kicked the chair in front of Angelo. "Sit down, Mr. Angelo. Since you are here, then who is Valletta?" Angelo was eager to figure it out. Charlotte smiled. "Whoever you think he is. You lied to us." Angelo couldn't suppress his anger. "Haven't you been lying to me? You took my money and my equipment, but you have been thinking about how to kill me. I only lied to you once. Can't you stand it?" Angelo reached out to the phone on the desk. Charlotte sneered. "You can take the phone, but whichever hand you use to hold the phone, I will break your hand. Want to try?" Angelo glared at Charlotte. "How dare you do this to me? Have you ever thought about the consequences?" "What consequences?" "Tell me," Charlotte said lightly. Angelo said coldly, "You will die, and everyone around you will die. Stop now, I can be your—" Before he could finish, Xiaolei suddenly waved his hand and smashed the handle of the spear into Angilio's eye socket. Bang! A heavy blow. Angelo fell to the ground. His brow bone was broken, and a stream of blood flowed out, blocking his vision. He covered his injured eye, and blood flowed from his fingers. He looked at Charlotte with his remaining eye, which was full of hatred and anger, as if there was a flame burning in it. Charlotte walked to Angelo's side and looked down at him condescendingly. He laughed. "Are you big shots used to this feeling of being superior? You can do whatever you want to me, but I can't be disrespectful to you, right?" Angelo glared at Charlotte and didn't speak. "You seem to have found out where the headquarters of the FA organization is. Tell me," said Charlotte. "Is that why you're here?" Angilio asked tentatively. Charlotte nodded. "Will you leave if I tell you?" Charlotte nodded again. "There's an envelope in the middle drawer with a piece of information in it." "That's what you want," said Angilio. Charlotte retreated to the desk and opened the middle drawer. There were some papers in it, and beside them lay an envelope. He picked up the envelope and opened it. There was a map inside. A place was circled with a marker with the letters FA next to it. The text on the map was written in Spanish. Charlotte glanced at a few names and found that it was a map of the Mexican state of Jalisco. Jalisco was the place where the Mexican drug lords were entrenched. Even the Mexican government forces were unable to capture it. Charlotte put the map in his pocket. The headquarters of the FA organization is in Mexico? Is this true? Don't think I don't know that Jalisco is a place where drug lords are entrenched. A contemptuous smile appeared at the corner of Angilio's mouth. If it were you or your people, you would never find the headquarters of the FA organization in your lifetime. You wouldn't even think that its predecessor was actually a drug-related criminal organization. Charlotte said, "No wonder you dare not fight it. You're afraid." So, you chose to continue to deal with me instead of fulfilling our agreement, right? Angilio got up from the ground. You've got what you want. Leave here. You paid us money and gave us some equipment, but this information is enough to make up for it. Your information is really expensive. You promised. Go. Angilio pointed to the door to Charlotte. I don't want to see you again. Charlotte smiled. If I leave, what about your holy relic? Don't you want it back? Angilio said, That's a matter for the future. I won't think about it now. The future? Will you still use this kind of dishonorable means to deal with me in the future? In your eyes, is it really that easy to deal with me? Angilio said coldly, If you don't leave now, the people who went out to look for you will come back soon. Don't blame me for not reminding you then. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. The phone on the desk suddenly rang. Angilio subconsciously reached out to pick up the phone, but when he saw the gun in Charlotte's hand, he quickly retracted his hand. He could speak to Charlotte impolitely because he was sure that Charlotte would not dare to really hurt him. But if he forced Charlotte into a situation where he had no choice, Charlotte would definitely shoot him. He had to give Charlotte hope that he could leave here safely. He thought that Charlotte would unplug the phone and cut off his contact with the paladins outside. Unexpectedly, Charlotte said to him, Answer it. Your people have probably found out that I'm not in the hotel. You. Angilio couldn't guess Charlotte's motive. Charlotte said, Tell them to continue searching in Valletta and don't come back. Okay. Angilio answered and then grabbed the phone. He glanced at Charlotte and suddenly said, He's here. After saying that, he quickly threw the phone away and quickly stepped back. In his imagination, after he said that, Charlotte would definitely attack him. But he quickly stepped back and saw that Charlotte was still standing in the same place, looking at him expressionlessly. If I were you, I'd get out of here as soon as possible, said Angilio. 100 paladins are actually fanatical believers. They are indeed a terrifying force in a head-on battle. But I wasn't paving the way for your retreat. I just didn't want to kill too many people. I asked you to let them continue searching in Valletta because I wanted to keep them alive. But you asked them to come back and die. Charlotte said. Only then did fear emerge from Angilio's heart. But only for a moment. He didn't believe what Charlotte said. Charlotte said, It's actually very easy for me to leave. I can even not kill the rest of your people. Angilio interrupted Charlotte and sneered. Who do you think you are? You think you can declare war on the Knights Hospitaller? Don't talk big. You can't scare me. Can't you let me finish what I want to say? It's actually very easy for me to leave. Take me to the Holy Palace and I'll leave after I get the armor. I promise you, as long as I get the armor, we won't fight again. You! How do you know about the existence of the armor? Don't waste any more time. What I want to tell you is that my people are killing your people outside. The longer you waste time, the more she will kill. Charlotte said. Angilio froze for a moment. The fear that had just disappeared appeared again, and this time it was even stronger. Also, since you've already called your people back, you don't have to count on them to save you. They're doomed. Charlotte said. Angilio suddenly shouted, Someone come, ah! His voice passed through the door and window, and was very loud in the quiet underground space. Charlotte didn't stop him. "Someone!" Angelo yelled again. This time, a woman appeared in the doorway. She was dressed in black and carried 2 katanas on her back. Her body was covered in blood, and she looked like she crawled out of a pool of blood. This woman wasn't a paladin of the Knights Hospitaller, but Charlotte's Akiko Tsukino. Akiko Tsukino raised her hand and threw a bag of food at Angelio's feet. The bag of food broke into pieces, and a bunch of ears slid out. She didn't lose to Oha, but she seemed to be using this method to tell Angelio that his people's ears were all cut off by her. Even if he screamed, they wouldn't be able to hear him. Looking at the big bag of ears on the ground, Angelio's face was ashen. From the moment Xia Lei barged into his study, he actually thought that his situation would not be too dangerous. He was just in a passive position. He was confident that he could get through this crisis, but when this woman threw a big bag of ears in front of him, he realized that he was actually in a desperate situation. "Boss, it's all cleaned up," Akiko Tsukino said. Charlotte nodded. "And their dog," Akiko Tsukino added. Charlotte was speechless. She didn't even let their dog go. "What are you talking about?" Angelo could no longer keep his composure. Charlotte ignored him. He said to Akiko Tsukino, "You go back the way you came and support Angumi-kan. It's almost time." Akiko Tsukino nodded. "Okay, I'll clean up again. There are still people in the houses on the rock wall." Charlotte hesitated for a moment, then said, "If there are no threats, don't clean up." Akiko Tsukino smiled. "I know your style, don't worry." She turned around and left, but the smell of blood still lingered in the air. Charlotte's gaze returned to Angelio. "Now it's just the 2 of us. What do you think of my suggestion?" "Bastard." Angelio was a little out of control. "Do you think that's all we have? We have thousands of believers, can you kill them all?" "Are you talking about normal believers? I don't think those believers are here to avenge you crazy guys, right? Those believers you mentioned have jobs, families, wives, and children to take care of. Their faith is normal, but yours is not. You even dared to snatch something from the Vatican. What faith are you talking about? What knight's loyalty? So, don't use your faith and the number of believers to scare me. Do you think that I'll be scared if you scare me now that our story has progressed so far? You'll regret it." Xia Lei suddenly raised his gun and fired a shot at Angelio's knee. "Ah!" Angelo screamed and fell to the ground, clutching his knees. Charlotte walked over and stepped on Angelio's knee. His voice was very cold. "I don't have much patience to talk to you about your faith and how many people you have. I'll give you 1 minute to take me to the Holy Palace." Angelio trembled in pain, gasping for air. "Shoot me, but I want to tell you that this is not the end, but the beginning of the war." Charlotte moved his finger, and another bullet was shot into Angelio's thigh. "Ah!" Angelo broke down. His mental defenses were crumbling under the immense pain. His anger was also rising crazily. When did anyone treat him like this? He was the commander of the Knights Hospitaller, a true leader. But this China guy in front of him didn't care about his dignity and identity at all, and shot him like he was a wild dog. "You have 30 seconds, Charlotte said, his voice cold. Chapter 879. In 30 seconds, Angelio had to make an important decision about his life or death. But he was still hesitating, trying to find another solution. "Do you need me to burn this church? That might help you make a decision," Charlotte said, "or I can go back and melt that piece of metal. In that case, you will never have a chance to find your holy relic. If you give me the armor now, you still have a chance to get the whole one. If you don't, then don't ever think about getting it again." 30 seconds had actually passed, but Charlotte didn't want to shoot Angelio for the 3rd time. It wasn't because he was merciful, but if he shot Angelio again, he might die. Angilio was silent for a moment before he said, "Come with me." He got up from the ground and limped to the door of the office. Both wounds were bleeding, and there were blood-stained footprints on the floor. Charlotte followed him out of the study, and at the same time, he awakened his X-ray ability to see through the environment around him again. But he didn't find any hidden space or trap. After investigating with his X-ray vision, he had a rough idea that the Holy Palace was not in this church. Angilio took Charlotte into a corridor. On both sides of the corridor, there were statues of the knights of the hospital in a row. These statues were all wearing ancient armor, holding weapons such as swords, shields, and hammers. They added a strong sense of history to the corridor, as well as an austere aura. At the end of the corridor was the back door of the church. Outside the back door, there was a road paved with stones, extending to a rock wall. It was about 70 or 80 meters long. On both sides of the stone road, there were also many statues of knights, and they were all sitting on horses. Charlotte's left eye looked through the back door and saw the rock wall at the end of the stone road. He thought to himself, there are so many statues of knights on both sides of the stone road. It can't be just art, right? They have a special meaning. Is the Holy Palace in that rock wall? While he was pondering over this question, Angilio suddenly grabbed a battle axe from a knight's statue and swung it at Charlotte's neck. Xia Lei's feet lightly tiptoed on the ground and his body moved backwards. The axe grazed his Adam's apple and missed. Puff! A gunshot rang out. Angilio's battle axe fell to the ground with a clang. There was a bloody hole on the back of his hand. Charlotte said coldly, "You'd better behave yourself, or else the next shot will take your life." "You will go to hell," said Angilio. "We've always been in hell," said Charlotte. "Humph." Angilio snorted coldly and limped towards the door. He let go of the hand that had been shot and put his other hand into his pocket. Charlotte's gaze locked onto his hand and penetrated his pocket. At that moment, he saw Angilio's hand grab a golden card and forcefully fold it. Gold was soft, so it bent when it was folded. One of the electronic cards on the card was also broken. Charlotte recognized it at a glance. It was the pass to enter the Holy Palace. The one that Angilio just destroyed was the same one that he copied from Arthur's hand. "Ha ha!" Angilio laughed crazily. He took out the destroyed pass and threw it on the ground in front of Charlotte. "I've already destroyed the pass to enter the Holy Palace. Don't even think about going in again. Shoot me, kill me." Charlotte frowned. "Why are you doing this? Even if I take you into the Holy Palace, you will still kill me. I don't want to be a traitor of the Knights Hospitaller. Even if I die, I will die with honor." Angilio seemed to have made a decision. Charlotte said, "Can't I enter the Holy Palace without a pass? Don't even think about it. I really didn't expect you to have such a trick up your sleeve. You are very cunning." Charlotte spread his hands, looking disappointed and helpless. "I don't have to go in. I can leave. But I have one last question. I believe you don't believe in the story of the horseman of the apocalypse on a red horse, right? You have no hope of restoring your country, so why are you still so persistent and so hard to find the fragments of the armor?" Angilio looked at Charlotte coldly and did not say a word. "You even stole the Book of Iron from the Vatican. What do you want? Or what is your purpose?" Angilio was silent for a moment before saying, "Do you believe in the existence of God?" For some reason, this question suddenly reminded Charlotte of Zhu Xianyue and the black-robed man. These two people had the power of God, but were they God? He said, "Yes, but sometimes mortals beautify God with their wishful thinking. They may not be our guardians at all, but hunters." "You're blaspheming the gods!" Angilio roared at Xia Lei as he waved his fist. "Are you doing this for God? That armor belongs to God. We believe in His existence. We can awaken Him and receive His blessings. We can obtain great power and even immortality." Angelo's eyes sparkled with excitement. He seemed to be picturing a certain god in his mind, as well as the gift that God had given him. Just for this? Charlotte was not satisfied with this answer. Angelios suddenly said, "The only God who guards the world, I will die for you. Please guide me back to the kingdom of heaven." After that, he suddenly pounced on a statue of a horseman and pulled out a two-handed sword from the horseman's hand. After pulling out the sword, he did not hesitate at all. He held the hilt tightly with both hands and stabbed at Charlotte's heart. Puff, puff, puff. Charlotte fired 3 shots in a row. The silenced viper trembled slightly, and the 3 bullets pierced into Angelios' chest. Clang! Angelios' two-handed sword fell to the ground, and then he fell down. Charlotte walked to his side and looked at Angelio calmly. Blood kept coming out of Angelios' mouth. He opened his mouth and said, "You will die. God's punishment will come. You and everyone around you will die. You still remember to curse me at this time? Well, I wanted to let you die more easily, but since you are so unkind, I will show you something." Charlotte put his hand into the pocket of his underwear. Angelios stared at Charlotte with a pair of bloody eyes. His life was fading away quickly, but he wanted to see what Charlotte would show him. He hoped it was a holy item. Charlotte took his hand out of the pocket. He was holding a golden card. Angelios' expression suddenly changed. Xia Lei waved the pass and said slowly, "Do you see it? I have a pass. I wanted to tell you, but you didn't want to hear it at all. Do you think it's useful for you to destroy it? I will go to the Holy Palace now and take what I want. You should go too. Don't hold on anymore." Puff! Angelios spat out a mouthful of blood, then his neck tilted, and he died. He could have held on for a little longer, but the pass that Charlotte showed him really pissed him off. Charlotte walked past Angelios' body and didn't look at him again. After leaving the church, Charlotte quickly passed through the stone path. He saw the bodies of 4 black-robed gunmen under the rock wall. It was obviously the work of Akiko Tsukino. To enter the Holy Palace, one needed a pass and a document signed by Angelio himself. The 4 black-robed gunmen were obviously the last checkpoint to guard the Holy Palace. However, Akiko Tsukino had solved this problem for him in advance. It was just that she didn't know the secret behind the rock wall. She's really efficient. I must give her some rewards after this operation. Charlotte thought to himself. He soon came to the end of the rock wall. The rock wall was smooth and flat, at least 200 or 300 square meters. There was a carving of a knight on a horse on the cliff. The horse was red and wore silver armor. It held a silver long sword and looked very majestic and ferocious. However, under the cover of the knight's helmet, the knight on the red horse had no face at all. Charlotte secretly said in his heart, "Riding a red horse and carrying a sword, isn't that the horseman of the apocalypse who represents war and persecution?" But Angelio didn't mention a word about the horseman of the apocalypse when he died, but he mentioned something about the one God. The one God. He suddenly thought of the prehistoric one, but this thought gave him a fright. The prehistoric one lived through the Ice Age, and then became the god of the Knights Hospitaller. Was this possible? Forget it, I'll think about these questions later. Now is not the time to think about this kind of problem. Charlotte cleared his mind and began to look for a place to insert the pass. He soon found something similar to an ATM card slot in one of the horseshoes of the knight statue. He didn't rush to insert the pass. Instead, he used his X-ray vision. Even he himself was shocked by what he saw. This rock wall turned out to be a metal gate disguised as a rock wall. It had an extremely complex electronic and mechanical structure inside. If he didn't have the pass, he could actually go in, but he would probably have to use the Hellhound cannon to blast it a few times. Charlotte inserted the pass into the card slot. After a few seconds, the metal gate slowly opened. It slid into the mountain, and an arched passage slowly appeared. The passage was not long, only 10 meters deep. The rock wall was carved very smooth. There was no light inside because there was no air. But this didn't prevent him from seeing the situation inside with the faint light outside. At the end of the passage was an arched space that looked like a church's worship hall. Charlotte took off his tactical flashlight and walked in with the help of the tactical flashlight. On both sides of the passage, there were also tall and majestic statues of knights with holy faces. They looked like they were alive and could brandish the cold weapons in their hands at any time to attack the intruder. Charlotte came to the arched space at the end of the passage. There was no statue of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary here, but in the place where it should be dedicated to the gods stood a silver armor. It was full of cracks, and there was a hole in the helmet, as if it was pierced by a sword or a spear. It stood there quietly, motionless, but it gave people a feeling that it was alive. At the same time, it released an ancient and mysterious aura. In front of it, people always had a strange feeling that something bad was about to happen. Charlotte walked toward it. When he came to the side of the armor, his eyes suddenly moved to an artificially carved stone wall behind the silver armor. There was an oil painting on the stone wall. Seeing the content of the painting, Charlotte felt like he was struck by lightning and couldn't move. Chapter 880. The person in the painting was the prehistoric one. He wore a set of silver armor and held a silver longsword in one hand and a silver helmet in the other. His expression was natural and serene, and he was extremely dignified. He looked like an ancient king or even a god. Ciale suddenly recalled the words that Angilio muttered before his death, "The only God that guards the world. I'm martyred for you. Please guide me back to the kingdom of heaven, the one God." Wasn't this the prehistoric one? Now it seemed that the one who rode a red horse through the holy city of Jerusalem during the Crusades was not a horseman of the apocalypse, but the one who fought with him was probably Zhu Xianyue. The prehistoric one said in the Book of Iron that he searched for a long time and went to many places. This was a vague concept. People who only had a lifespan of a few decades or 100 years might think that it was only a few years or 10 years, but for someone who had lived through the Ice Age and had a lifespan of several million years, a very, very long time was definitely not just a few years or 10 years. It could be tens of thousands of years or even millions of years. Charlotte remembered what Da Vinci wrote in his notebook with invisible ink. "Am I the smartest person in the world? No, if I were the smartest person in the world, I would be able to unlock the secret of God's metal. In my opinion, it is as mysterious as she is and does not belong to this world. 30 years ago, she appeared in front of me. She made me different. 30 years have passed, and my search has been fruitless. I am old and will die soon, but she is still so young and shows no signs of aging. I think she is an angel. It is a part of the angel sword. She is an angel who fell to the mortal world, and her angel sword was destroyed. She is looking for the traces of a god and fighting against demons. But this is destined to be a dangerous path full of thorns." Charlotte's mind became active. The "it" in this passage was obviously the silver metal. But now it seemed that Zhu Xianyue did not tell him the truth. He always thought it was a part of a sword. But the truth was that it was part of a set of battle armor. However, this armor did not belong to Zhu Xianyue. It was the only one of its kind in the prehistoric era. The prehistoric one relied on his armor to fight against Zhu Xianyue. She wanted Da Vinci to decipher it so that she could find a flaw and defeat the prehistoric one. She always came back with injuries, and every time, she would bring back some mineral powder and smear it on the canvas. I asked her what the mineral powder was, but she never told me. I also asked her why she painted such a strange picture. She said that if she died, one day someone would come here and wake her up. I can't understand such a thing, just like I can't understand the world of God. She never told me what she was fighting for or who her enemies were. She left the labyrinth again and again, and every time she returned, she would be injured. She never gives up, but I can't help her. The last time she came back was a night without moon or stars. This time she was hurt very badly. She lost her body. I can't understand how she can still exist, but that's how God is. She told me that she was going to die, and she asked me to do something for her. After she left, I sealed the labyrinth and finished all the things she asked me to do. Charlotte's brain automatically sketched out some scenes. The battle between Zhu Xianwei and the prehistoric era was intense. The armor that the prehistoric era relied on to fight was badly damaged, and Zhu Xianwei was also heavily injured. It was a tough battle. Not only did the prehistoric era realize that he was going to die, but Zhu Xianwei also seemed to realize that she was going to die. So she started to collect the energy that could resurrect her, and had Da Vinci prepare for his resurrection. Past events and conjectures appeared in his mind, rolling and tangling, and he could not rest for a moment. Although there was no direct evidence to prove it, he already had a conclusion in his mind. That was, Zhu Xuanyue's opponent was the prehistoric era, and the battle between the two ended in mutual destruction. The prehistoric era died, but because Zhu Xianwei was in the form of pure energy, she was prepared to resurrect before she died. But what did the prehistoric era prepare for? This question popped up in Charlotte's mind, and it also made him think of the AE capsule, the ancient alloy shard, and the compass that searched for the shard. These things definitely had something to do with the prehistoric era. There was no need for evidence, because the mysterious energy in his body was the evidence, and it was also the only reason he could decipher the contents of the Book of Iron. Let's say the prehistoric era left the AE capsule before he died, and it ended up in my hands, creating the person I am now. And am I the next generation of the prehistoric era? The prehistoric era also called me that in the Book of Iron and the Bronze Treasure Book, and it seemed to be the truth. However, Zhu Xianwei also used to call me that, and at that time she was not complete. According to the relationship between the inheritance of abilities, I was even her enemy, the only enemy. But why didn't she attack me, and even helped me through all the difficulties? Such a hypothesis appeared in Charlotte's mind, but he could not understand some of the questions. Among the difficulties that Zhu Xianwei had helped him through, the Japanese operation was one of them. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been able to escape from the siege of dozens of armed men from the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. He and Long Bing would have died in that sea. The second was naturally the operation at the Tavong Snow Mountain in the Shi province. If not for her, he and Tang Yuyan would have died on that snow mountain. If they were destined to be enemies, why would she help him? A new question popped up in Charlotte's mind. Was the prehistoric era not telling the truth, or did Zhu Xianwei lie to me? No matter who it was, the information they left behind might not be true. Also, what is the identity of the black-robed man? Is he one of Zhu Xuanyue's unfriendly kind? Or is he related to the prehistoric era? What kind of role does he play in this series of events? He thought of that night in Paris, France, when he was a guest at my Hattori's house, and it was a banquet with the Hongmen. However, just as he subdued the Hattori family, a mysterious phone call came, and a woman's voice reminded him to escape. After that, the black-robed man appeared for the first time, and he almost lost his life. Was that phone call from Zhu Xianwei? He had always suspected this, but he did not get an answer from Zhu Xianwei. When Zhu Xianwei woke up in India, her IQ was not even 10 years old, and she was in a daze. During the process of her resurrection, the black-robed man had obviously attacked her, causing that violent explosion. From this, it could be seen that Zhu Xianwei and the black-robed man were enemies. The black-robed man, Zhu Xianwei, the prehistoric era. These three characters alternated in his mind, forming a triangle, and he seemed to be a prisoner trapped in the middle of this iron triangle. Sigh, looks like I still have to find Zhu Xianwei to solve this mystery. I wonder where she is now? Langley in America? Or is she somewhere else? Charlotte could not help but miss her. So many things had happened between him and her, it was no longer as simple as enemy or friend. However, even though he missed Zhu Xianyue, he was not worried about Zhu Xuanyue's safety at all. Even though her IQ was less than 10 years old, in terms of her ability, even the scariest villain in the world was just an ant compared to her. For a moment, Charlotte shook his head and chased away all the doubts and conjectures in his mind. This trip to the Holy Palace was the most rewarding one for him. Even though he still could not solve the final mystery, he did not expect to solve all the problems here. And now it was time to leave. He took off the black robe he was wearing and laid it flat on the ground. Then, he dismantled the armor on the wooden frame and put it into the black robe. The entire armor weighed less than 10 kilograms, very light. This was not surprising to him, because he understood the structure of this silver metal. Putting the armor on his shoulder, Charlotte turned back to look at the prehistoric era's portrait on the stone wall. He said one sentence. Whether or not my ability originated from you, I want to tell you that you are you, and I am me. I will not become anyone, I will only be myself. In the oil painting, the prehistoric era seemed to be looking at Charlotte with a strange gaze. Charlotte retracted his gaze and turned to leave. On the way back, he did not see a single person, but when he arrived at the dock, he saw many old people, women, and children. They stood on the heads of their horses and looked at the burning ships, and the corpses of the paladins floating in the sea. Charlotte's strategy of luring the tiger away from the mountain had attracted most of the elites of the Knights Hospitaller. They found nothing at the Mediterranean Hotel, and then called Angilio. Angilio told them that he was at the Holy Church, so the elites of the Knights Hospitaller rushed back. But they did not know that the ships at the port had been rigged with military explosive devices. Although he did not see the situation with his own eyes, he could imagine that Akiko Tsukino, who was hiding in the dark, gently pressed the remote control, and the whole port was plunged into a sea of fire. In the face of a strong enemy like the Knights Hospitaller, brains were more useful than force. Charlotte bypassed the crowd, came to the edge of the port, and then quietly plunged into the sea. A woman in a diving suit swam towards him from the bottom of the sea. She handed him an oxygen tank and an oxygen mask, and helped him put them on. This woman was Akiko Tsukino. Her body looked particularly sexy in the diving suit, especially her perky butt, which gave people a feeling of power and temptation. She looked the same when he came, but Charlotte did not notice this. Now, it seemed that because he had finally obtained the protective suit, his mood had changed. When he relaxed and was happy, he thought of other things. Fortunately, it was dark underwater, and Akiko Tsukino did not seem to notice where Charlotte was looking at her body. After she helped Charlotte put on the oxygen tank, she untied the diving motorcycle fixed to the rock, and drove along the waterway to the Mediterranean Sea. Charlotte followed closely behind. When the diving motorcycle started to move, he looked back at the port. He saw the flames and the blurred figures of the crowd. He knew that the Knights Hospitaller had not died out. This was just a headquarters, and there were only some fanatical believers. But no matter what, he would not come to this place a second time. If I destroy this place, the person who will thank me the most will probably be the Walton, right? He has now become the real leader of the Knights Hospitaller. I hope he is a smart person, and it is best that he does not come looking for trouble with me again, Charlotte thought to himself. The sea stretched out in his field of vision, and the waves rolled. A dark yacht floated quietly on the sea. Chapter 881. 2 days later, China. Thunder Horse Army Factory, Underground Laboratory. Charlotte put on the silver armor piece by piece. This process took him about half an hour. In fact, he only needed a few minutes to put it on, but it was too tattered. He had to be careful, afraid that it would fall to the ground and break some part, or he didn't believe that it would knock off a piece. Finally, it was the helmet. He placed the silver metal he had brought out of the underground maze into the hole on the helmet. Sure enough, the two matched perfectly. It wasn't a part of the angel's sword at all, but a part of the helmet. He stuck a piece of transparent tape on the damaged part of the helmet, repaired the helmet and put it on his head. Then, he moved in front of a mirror that he had brought with him. He could no longer see his face in the mirror. He could not even see his fingers or neck. The armor covered him from head to toe. It wasn't wrong to call it armor, but it was also reasonable to call it protective clothing. There wasn't much of a problem. Its style wasn't the style of medieval crusader armor, but more like a Gothic full-body armor. There were no unnecessary decorations on the helmet. It was just an oval. If one ignored the damaged areas, it was as smooth as an egg. Therefore, in terms of the style of the helmet, it had a bit of a sci-fi vibe. However, he knew that this was definitely not a Gothic full-body armor, nor was it the armor of any ancient dynasty. This was because humans were still unable to make its materials. It covered him from head to toe, but it weighed less than 10 pounds. After looking at it quietly for a while, Charlotte walked to the workbench. On the workbench was the ancient alloy box that was missing a corner, the compass, the bronze book, and a viper pistol. Charlotte grabbed the viper pistol and pressed the muzzle against his thigh. He only hesitated for 2 seconds before pulling the trigger. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The bullet hit the armor on his leg. Sparks flew, and the bullet was knocked to the side. When a pistol was fired at close range, the impact could sometimes even break the ribs of targets wearing bulletproof vests. However, he only felt a little bit of the impact, and the impact was almost negligible. It was like being flicked by a finger. The leg armor did not have any traces of being hit by a bullet. Even the sparks from before were caused by a copper bullet. What a terrifying defense! If I were to wear this armor in battle, its weight would be almost negligible to me, but it would be almost impossible for the enemy to kill me with a gun. I'm sure that even Barrett's anti-material sniper would only be able to leave a small mark on this armor and not penetrate it. Charlotte was shocked. However, what shocked him was not the test result of his shot, but the association that he drew from it. Even with such an armor, Zhu Xianyue still managed to punch a hole in the helmet. Her body was also full of cracks. One could imagine how terrifying her combat power was at her peak. It was unimaginable. A few minutes later, Charlotte's attention shifted to the box that was missing a corner. His mood also became solemn. The armor or protective suit was finally in his hands. His original purpose of getting it was to wear it and enter the world of the box. Now that the armor was on him and the box was in front of him, he could go in at any time if he wanted to. However, when the idea of going in and taking a look came up, he hesitated. He did not have the courage to do so. This was not a decision to put on pajamas and enter the bedroom, nor was it a decision to put on a bathrobe and enter the bathroom. This was a decision to go from one world to another. What if he went in and could not come out? What if he went in and got lost in that world? What if he went in and died? Every one of these consequences scared him. He did experiment with the fragment, but it was only an experiment. He did not go in with his whole body. As long as there was a little uncertainty, if he went in rashly, it might bring disaster. He didn't know why. Just when he was hesitating, several women's faces suddenly appeared in his mind. Long Bing's, Liang Xiao's, Jiang Rui's, Shentu Tiannin's, Tang Yuyan's, and Fanfan's. These women had entangled feelings with him. He used to have a headache when he thought about his relationship with them, but now they produced a force that stopped him from taking risks, and it was very strong. Then, he thought of his father, Xia Changhe, and thought of Xia Shui. Finally, he thought of his career. It was not his career alone. It was related to the hope of the rise of a country's military industry. Forget it. I'll wait and learn more. When I'm confident, I'll consider whether I should go in and take a look. What's more, it is so broken now. It will affect its performance. He found some excuses for himself and finally gave up. Half an hour later, he left the underground laboratory. It was already close to winter. The sky in the north was dark and gloomy, giving people a depressing feeling. He glanced at the sky and then walked to the office building. He secretly said in his heart, 3 years, if I only have 3 years left in my life, then in these 3 years, I must build the Thunder Horse military factory into a world-class military enterprise. In that case, even if I die, my life will not be in vain. 3 years, 3 years. I also want to have a few children. Thinking of children, he couldn't help but smile. I seem to have Fan. The rest are Liang Xiao and Jiang Rui. During this time, I must make them pregnant. Thinking of Jiang Rui, he took out his mobile phone and prepared to call Jiang Rui. Coincidentally, when he was about to dial, a call came in. It was none other than Jiang Rui, whom he wanted to call. He smiled and slid the answer button. Rui, I was just about to call you. How have you been recently? Are you lying to a little girl? Charlotte, you haven't called me for so long and you haven't come to me. Do you want to die? Jiang Rui's voice was still the same as before. Charlotte smiled. In this world, the only woman who would be so fierce to him was Jiang Rui. She was like this when he was young, and she was like this when he grew up. She was like this when she wasn't his woman, and she was still like this when she became his woman. However, he didn't mind at all. This was Jiang Rui. If one day she wasn't like this, then she wouldn't be Jiang Rui. Where are you? Of course I'm in the company, Charlotte said. I'm also in your company. It was Jiang Rui's voice. I just got out of the car. Are you in the office building? I'll come to you right away. Charlotte said, wait a minute. I'm not in the office building. I'll come to pick you up right away. He hung up the phone and walked quickly to the parking lot. Around the corner of the office building, he saw Jiang Rui coming from the direction of the parking lot. Dressed in a policewoman's uniform, her breasts filled the coat, and her buttocks filled the uniform pant. Coupled with her beautiful face, she was indescribably fresh and attractive. Jiang Rui also saw Charlotte, and the corners of her mouth slightly curled up. It seemed that she was smiling, but also seemed to be rebuking him. Her pair of black eyes were also full of the excitement of being released from the pain of lovesickness, as well as the affection of a family member. In short, although the two hadn't said a word, their eyes seemed to have said thousands of words. Charlotte walked towards her. Jiang Rui also walked towards Charlotte. After 2 steps, she suddenly ran. Her breasts were shaking, and her buttocks were also shaking. Her running posture was very attractive. In the blink of an eye, she ran to Charlotte. Without saying anything, she opened her arms and held Charlotte in her arms. Her tears flowed out uncontrollably. You didn't call me, and you didn't come to me. I thought you forgot me and didn't want me anymore. Charlotte's heart suddenly softened. His hands also moved to Jiang Rui's slender waist. He held her tightly in his arms and said in her ear, Don't cry. You're a policewoman. If a policewoman cries, people will laugh at her. I don't care. If I want to cry, I'll cry. Jiang Rui buried her head in Charlotte's shoulder. She didn't want to let go of him, and she didn't want others to see her crying. Charlotte couldn't do anything to her. He could only hug her and let her release the emotions that had accumulated in her heart. He and Jiang Rui were childhood sweethearts, but the feeling of love had always been very weak. At that time, he only got together with her because she took the absolute initiative. But he was the kind of man who developed feelings over time. Jiang Rui had been with him for so long, so their feelings naturally became deeper. The place where the two hugged was under the office building, which was also a very lively place with people coming and going. In this way, there were naturally a lot of people watching. There were people upstairs and on the ground. In short, as soon as they saw her, they couldn't bear to look away. Some discussions also came out. Chairman Xia is really amazing. When did he get a policewoman? You're so ignorant. Do you know who that policewoman is? That's Jiang Rui, our Chairman Xia's childhood sweetheart. Isn't our Chairman Xia engaged to that Fan? He's hugging his ex-girlfriend in front of so many people. What if Fan hears about it? Won't they get into a fight? Do you think it's you? Do you know Mr. Liang? Mr. Liang is the housekeeper of our Rema group. The real housekeeper didn't say anything. How can it be Fan's turn? This relationship is really messy. You're not qualified to be so messy. Shu, stop talking. Mr. Liang is coming out. He really came out. This time, Chairman Xia is in trouble. Amidst the worried gazes and discussions about Xia Lei, Liang Xiao, who was upstairs, poked her head out from the guardrail and said loudly, "Old Xia Rui is here. Why don't you invite her up to have a seat? Go home and hug her. I'll ask the chef to cook." She already called him Old Xia. Was there a need to explain their relationship? But Old Liang asked her, Old Xia, and Jiang Rui to hug her at home. Moreover, he said it in front of so many employees. His boldness was so cool. Jiang Rui let go of Charlotte. She looked up at Liang Xiao and smiled. "Xiao, long time no see. How are you?" Liang Xiao also smiled sweetly. "Rui, come up. Let's talk." Liang Xiao knew Jiang Rui's position in Charlotte's heart. Jiang Rui also knew Liang Xiao's position in Charlotte's heart. Both women were well aware of it, so there was no conflict between them. Xia Lei looked around, and the employees who were watching the show came back to their senses. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. Chapter 882. The office was filled with warmth and harmony. "Rui, have some tea." Liang Xiao made a cup of rose tea for Jiang Rui. Jiang Rui looked very embarrassed. "Xiao, why did you make tea for me personally? Why do we two sisters care about this?" Liang Xiao said. Two sisters. These words were obviously not said casually. Although Jiang Rui was a careless woman, she could still understand these words. She held the tea that Liang Xiao made for her, and her face was also full of smiles. "Yes, we two sisters don't stand on ceremony in the future. We should join forces, and if someone bullies us, we will deal with him together." Liang Xiao glanced at Charlotte and said with a smile, "He is so fierce, we are not his opponent even if we join forces. Let's just accept our fate. Who told us to be women?" Charlotte said, "Yes, if you marry a chicken, follow the chicken, and if you marry a dog, follow the dog. How can you join forces to deal with your man?" Ba. Liang Xiao blushed and spat. "Don't you feel ashamed? Who is your woman? You are too shameless, aren't you? You actually said such words in front of the two of us. What do you want?" Jiang Rui obviously stood on the same line as Liang Xiao. Charlotte's mouth showed a trace of a bad smile. "I'm not just saying it, I also want you to be the mother of my child. I have decided that I should train my successor as soon as possible." Go, you are really shameless." Liang Xiao's face was even redder. Yes, really shameless." Jiang Rui's face was also red. Although the two women knew each other's existence and could accept each other, it was also a private matter. It was enough for them to understand each other tacitly, but Charlotte said it in front of them, and even involved the matter of having children. Women were, after all, women. They were thin-skinned, so it was inevitable that they would feel shy and embarrassed. Charlotte said in all seriousness, "Are you going to give birth or not?" Liang Xiao said shyly, "It's rare for Rui to come to the capital. You should give birth with her." Jiang Rui stamped her feet. "I can't talk to you anymore. I'm going to see Uncle Xia. I'm going to tell him that you bullied me." She really left. She really couldn't stand Charlotte's slanderous remarks. Liang Xiao chased after him. "I'll walk you out." The two women left Charlotte alone in the office. Even if he wanted to talk nonsense, no one would listen to him. Watching the two women walk out with their arms around each other's shoulders, Charlotte's gaze stopped on their buttocks, and his heart was filled with a comfortable feeling. They made him forget his stress and troubles. They also made him feel that life was colorful and made him cherish everything he had now. Charlotte sat quietly in the office for a while, then he left the office building and went to the tank workshop. Rema Group's first tank was about to be born, and he had to be busy for a while. He was busy, and the day passed unknowingly. Sylvia and Anina had to stay in the workshop to work overtime. Charlotte couldn't convince the two German workaholics, so he had to go back to Ping An residence alone. The family had dinner together. Xia Shui and Ryu Youngnam slipped away early in the morning, followed by Xia Changhe. I'm going to the workshop to see if the two German girls need anything. You guys talk. When Xia Changhe left, Liang Xiao also found an excuse to slip away. Charlotte's voice was very gentle. You actually don't have to go. Liang Xiao glared at Charlotte and then leaned close to his ear. You want to, but don't even think about it. Charlotte, Rui, I'm leaving. Liang Xiao said goodbye to Jiang Rui. Jiang Rui's face was red. She nodded her head awkwardly and softly said, She knew that this was Liang Xiao deliberately leaving space for her and Charlotte. Although such a thing gave people a weird feeling, she was actually quite grateful to Liang Xiao. Only Charlotte and Jiang Rui were left in the dining room. The two of them looked at each other affectionately, and time seemed to have returned to the past. At that time, the two of them were at the same table. Her bag was always filled with snacks to tempt him to ask for them, and then she would find all kinds of reasons not to give them to him. At that time, Jiang Rui was embarrassed by Charlotte's stare. She lowered her head and said, What are you looking at? Haven't you seen enough? How can I see enough? I won't be able to see enough for a lifetime. Charlotte's voice was gentle and pleasant. You only know how to lie. How many women have you cheated? Jiang Rui looked a little jealous. Charlotte laughed. He got up from his seat and carried Jiang Rui, then left the dining room and walked towards his room. The light shone on the road, and the two of them were left on the ground. There was you in me and I in you. They couldn't be separated. If only you could carry me like this for the rest of your life. Jiang Rui soon stopped thinking about how many women Charlotte had cheated. She wrapped her arms around Charlotte's neck and her whole body softened in his arms. Promise me, will you carry me like this for the rest of your life? Charlotte laughed and said, Are you trying to tire me to death? I'll definitely die of exhaustion if you keep hugging me like this. Are you going to carry me or not? Jiang Rui bit Charlotte's ear. She looked fierce, but her little mouth was powerless. Charlotte laughed out loud. Okay. I'll carry you. Okay? I'll carry you in the yard for the whole night. Jiang Rui was originally laughing, but after hearing the second half of the sentence, she couldn't laugh anymore. She said coquettishly, Don't you dare. Then what do you want? I want you. Am I not in front of you? I want you to do that. She bit Charlotte's ear and muttered something. Charlotte said, I can't hear you clearly. What did you say? The two of them bickered, and before they knew it, they had arrived at Charlotte's room. The warm bed, the ambiguous light, it was full of romance. The two of them were entangled together. At this time, any words were superfluous. In a time. What's that? An antidote. I'm not poisoned. Why are you giving me an antidote? Jiang Rui looked confused. Charlotte said in her ear, It's not you who's poisoned, it's me. Then, he muttered in her ear again. Jiang Rui's jade dimples suddenly turned red. I'm sad that I can't get pregnant. So that's the reason. My mother asked me to go for a checkup a few days ago, and I'm fine. I'm on leave this time to let you go for a checkup. I didn't expect you to be ready. You're so bad. Then I'll show you. Charlotte pounced on her. It was a ridiculous night, and an indescribable romantic story. It was dawn. The handsome man had already woken up, while the beautiful woman was still sleeping in bed. When Charlotte left the room, he covered Jiang Rui with the quilt. But before he walked out of the door, Jiang Rui kicked the quilt away. What's more, she rolled over, and one of her long legs was pressed on the quilt. That plump and exquisite big white ball was exposed to the air without any cover. Charlotte smiled bitterly and shook his head. His mind was full of the bad things he had done. He was too lazy to cover her with the quilt. He opened the door and walked out. The morning sun was bright and beautiful. It was rare for the capital to have such good weather. Ring, 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 ring. Charlotte took out his phone and glanced at it. The number on the screen surprised him because it was from Italy. He quickly thought of a person, and he swiped the answer button. It's me, Charlotte. Mr. Walton, what's up? I'm using a new card, but you can guess that it's me. You're really a very smart person. Walton's voice came from the phone. Tell me, why are you looking for me? You've killed so many of our people. Why do you think I'm looking for you? Mr. Walton, you can't talk nonsense. I can hire a lawyer to sue you in Italy. Charlotte's voice turned cold. Perhaps I can also get justice in other ways. Walton was silent for a moment before he said, Mr. Xia, I don't want to quarrel with you. I'm calling to ask for a truce. Truce? You don't want to? Walton's voice was a little nervous and angry. Charlotte suddenly laughed. Mr. Walton, we've never been enemies, let alone had a war. How can there be a truce? In the Battle of the Holy Palace in Malta, almost all the elites of the Knights Hospitaller were killed. The current Knights Hospitaller could not be compared with the previous Knights Hospitaller. If Charlotte continued to attack at this time, he didn't need to do it himself. He only needed to send the Zodiac Squad and then spend money to hire some mercenaries. He could completely eradicate the Knights Hospitaller. This was the reason why Walton called. He was not thinking about revenge now, but self-preservation. If you say so, then I'm relieved. Walton said, Our holy relic. Charlotte said coldly, Mr. Walton, sometimes it's not good to be too greedy. I gave you $50 million and so much equipment, but all I got in return was your enmity and framing me. If you've suffered any losses, you deserve it. I don't owe you anything. Walton was silent again, then he sighed. Well, let's leave the problem for future generations to solve. Congratulations, Mr. Walton. You're now the real leader of the Knights Hospitaller. If you want, we can be very good friends. You're welcome to do business with me. Charlotte said. Thank you, Mr. Xia. Goodbye. Walton hung up the phone. Xia Lei felt a weight lifted from his heart. Walton personally called for a truce, which was equivalent to eliminating the trouble of the Knights Hospitaller. Walton was a very practical man, and he knew what was right in this period of time. Leave it for future generations to solve? Charlotte recalled Walton's words, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. 3 years later, I don't even know if I'll still be around. Even if the Knights Hospitaller recover and want to take revenge on me and take back your holy relic, I'm afraid you won't have a chance, right? Xia Changhe came over, holding a folded map in his hand. Charlotte put away his phone and greeted him. Dad. Xia Changhe handed the map to Charlotte. I've seen it. If you hadn't given me this map, I wouldn't have known that the headquarters of the FA organization is in Jalisco, Mexico. What a joke. I'm also a member of the FA organization. He looked at Charlotte. You've found the headquarters of the FA organization. What are you going to do? Charlotte thought for a moment and said, The FA organization is not the Knights Hospitaller. I have to have a careful plan and be fully prepared. It's the Jalisco state of Mexico, the world of drug lords. Even the Mexican government doesn't dare to set foot there. It's not easy to eradicate the FA organization. Xia Changhe patted Charlotte on the shoulder. I know you have your reasons for wanting to eradicate the FA organization, but my reasons are the most important. You're worried that one day they'll come to me to settle the score. It doesn't matter, son. If they let go, you should let go too. I'll solve my own business. Don't worry about it. During this time, the FA organization has been very restrained. They haven't come to trouble me and you again, but they will always be a huge threat. Dad, I promise you that if I can let go, I will. If I can't, I'll eradicate the FA organization, no matter what the cost, Charlotte said. His eyes were firm. Let go? He hadn't really thought about it. If he was going to leave this world eventually, then before he left, he would remove all threats to his family. He wanted to create a safe and happy environment for his loved ones. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.